Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast, episode 158. I'm Steve Smith, along with Dave Watts. Excited to have Dave here. Welcome, Dave.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Dave, I've known Dave almost 10 years. I've been assigned to do this at the very beginning of our podcast. Is thank you for contributing to our cause, our fundraising campaign. We're asking people to donate a minimum of $10 per month. What do you think of that big request?
I think that's a minimum request, and you'll get it from us.
With we would hope that people are finding enough benefit with our free educational content. Next question. Before we get into San Antonio, Davy Crockett and the Alamo. You're one of our first visitors. You're here with your son, 8-year-old Dorian. You brought one of your college players, Joshua. What are your impressions of Wintergreen? We're coming to you from Wintergreen Resort, Wintergreen, Virginia.
Oh, it's beautiful. Oh my gosh. And the weather here, to get a break from the 105-degree heat in San Antonio and come here to the trees and the mountains and it's a kind of an unbelievable spot. It's underutilized. 16 clay courts, is that right?
Yeah, 4 at the bottom of the mountain, so a total of 16, but 12 up top, and then there's 3 indoor courts, 8 pickleball. There's snow skiing, there's hiking, there's all sorts of amenities for young kids.
That's unbelievable.
I really don't know all the ins and outs of what's on top of the mountain, but yeah, pretty place.
No, it's been fun to discover a little bit of it with you guys.
Yeah, we hope to have more coaches like yourself and with your players, whether it's 18-year-old like your college player or an 8-year-old like your son. We usually start in the beginning with our guests, but let me ask you a question. How do you do it? You're coaching 2 tennis teams, and you're also working at Blossom Park in San Antonio, which is an 18-court facility, right?
Yeah, Blossom Athletic Center. Yeah. No, it's tough, but it's fun. It's all really fulfilling. The junior program's great. I mean, and it's gotten better. We have a really good support system there. It's a lot of my college guys helping coach, and so that's kind of a cool way to spend some more time with them. We do have a few of the female players coach as well. We're hoping we get more female coaches from the team this year. But as far as coaching 2 teams, last year I had an unbelievable assistant coach. Behind every good head coach, there's a better assistant, and I think that was the case last year. Unfortunately, he's gone on to bigger and better things. He's about to try to play pro pickleball, and he found a good spot in kind of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So I'm really happy for him. But no, I think this year we'll bring some challenges. It's a big roster. I think we've got 24 players, and we're probably going to add 2 more between the men and the women.
And for our listeners, NAIA stands for.
Oh gosh, we just went over
this. National Athletic Collegiate Association.
You got it.
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
And you always hear about D1, but there's D1, D2, D3. Remember a French coach saying the first division. But back in the day, I don't think as much anymore because of the internet. Foreign players would come over, and I worked at a school, Tyler Junior College, TJC. And I would say people didn't know the difference between TJC and USC. And now University of South Carolina is very strong, but we're always in the years back, there was University of Southern Cal.
Sure. Yeah. No, NAIA is interesting. I love it. I think it's great. I think one of the biggest differences is, there's not an age restriction. Rules are a little bit different in certain aspects of that. That's probably the first thing that comes to mind. My top player is 26 years old, and so, yeah.
And it's mostly private schools, NAIA. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. There's some challenges being where we are in Texas. Our conference is very spread out, and so if we want to go play a lot of ranked teams and things like that, like we've got to we've got to drive a long way or try to get a really cheap flight and van it after that. So that's tough. Whereas like there's certain pockets where a ton of NAI schools are really close together. I think at Kansas or something, or Florida with they have a bunch of solid NAI
And
teams.
the name of your college?
Our Lady of the Lake University.
Are you the Bulldogs?
We're the Saints.
The Saints. I believe there's 14 schools in the United States that are the Bulldogs. And there's that one school in California that they were the Bulldogs, but now they are the Banana Slugs. Is that right?
You would know better than I would.
Slugs, but scholarships and where are your players from? Those two questions.
Yeah. I mean, we are, so the NAI allows you to have up to 5 full scholarships in athletics, but we don't have that. I'll just say that much. We're quite a bit under that.
And also the budget for travel.
Yeah, it's pretty minimal. I mean, we fundraise a lot, and we have to be very strategic. If we want to have a national ranking, we've got to really plan our trips to try to go play the ranked teams and things like that. And so you just have to, and then you try to get in as many as you can. You're playing 5 matches in a weekend if you can, because the budget won't allow for many trips.
And it's been said, not just by me, but the US of A. I love living in the US of A, proud to be an American, but we're a brand society. With that statement, very difficult to attract American kids to go to your school. They're more interested in going to a name school.
Yeah, that can be the case. Like Josh, for instance, he's local. He's from San Antonio, and trained with me a little bit. And so that, I think that helped into bringing. It's nice to have some players from San Antonio.
Oh, for sure.
And so I've got him and another player named Caleb Olin, who's going to come in from San Antonio on the men's side, and I've got one female from San Antonio coming in on the women's side. But we have, on both sides, men and women, just to list off, I'm sorry if I forget, but we've got 3 French players, soon to be 4. We've got someone from Slovakia, someone from Czech, and someone from Brazil. We've got 2 people from Brazil, the Netherlands, Mexico. It's quite a bit, and I think I'm leaving a few out.
With Blossom, does your team play at the park?
We do. Yeah, we have 3 courts on campus, but our matches and stuff are at the facility, which is awesome. Especially the evening matches, because we'll get the junior program to come out and they're excited, and we've got a little bit of a crowd out there, and it's fun. It's really fun.
It's good. So for the most part, the weather in San Antonio, you don't have indoor. You don't really need indoor. Is that correct?
No, we don't need indoor. I think the biggest reason to have indoor is the heat more than the rain. But no, we don't need
indoor.
Have
indoor courts.
No indoor courts in all of San Antonio. It's crazy.
And 18 courts.
Yeah.
Backboards.
Yeah. We have one giant underutilized backboard in the back. Yeah, so we need to use that more.
And you run a junior program. You mentioned your coaches work in the junior program. So 2 teams.
Yeah.
Do you have graduate assistants to help you?
No. I'm actually hiring an assistant coach as we speak. That's what I'm working on. So I'm hoping in the next year I can get a grad assistant. Things are really I think things are really looking much better at Our Lady of the Lake. Actually, we've got a really dynamic new president that has really helped, and so I'm really optimistic about. I think we're going to be getting more resources and that kind of thing. So
coming back to the brand question, I know I've worked with many players that, and I told them up front, the chances of you playing at that school are slim and none, and Slim just left town. Not to discourage anyone, but I do think, especially with the boys, many times, and the expression, they could be the token American. They can go to a school and the coach they want to have typically an American college tennis coach wants to have some American players, and it's a long shot for the player to play.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about junior college? Do you have transfers?
No, that's a big one for me. Most of my players are transfers.
But not
You
from a
know,
junior college?
no, from a JUCO.
From a
Yeah, yeah.
JUCO.
Both. I mean, I could go through the list, but yeah, I mean, we had so three of our players are from Seward.
From where?
Seward, they call it Seward. I think it's pronounced Seward,
It's in
but it's
Kansas.
in Kansas.
Yeah.
Yeah. All three French players. So, one of them, they each came one semester after another. And our number one player, he was there the longest, and he was there to win a national championship. And so, he kind of has that experience, and it really helps.
Years ago, you had to be a qualified student, meaning that in the junior college level, if you had a really low score on your SAT or ACT, you would not have been qualified. And that meant you had to stay at junior college for 2 years. Do you know if that rule still exists? Or another way to ask that would be, do some junior college players come to you after 1 year versus 2?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a player coming in. He spent a year, I think, at Hartford, and he's coming in after a year. He wanted to transfer. So
I know you really love tennis, but in this podcast, you really have to love microphones. So you got to be really close to the
got it.
microphone.
Yeah, sure.
With, is the facility owned by the city or the county?
Well, it's a school facility.
Oh, it's school facility.
Yeah. So all the high schools actually, it should be a great recruiting opportunity in some ways. I mean, they play, the districts, the regionals, and the state tournament there, and then they even do like a UTR national thing there. I mean, it's packed.
As you know, I lived in the great state of Texas for 10 years, Tyler, Texas. And at that time, throughout the 80s, high school tennis, like most places in the United States, it was a big thing. And everyone played high school tennis. Not so much anymore, correct?
Yeah, no, it's kind of a constant melodrama in the city, is who's homeschooling this year and who's not. In fact, one of our top schools, Reagan, two of their boys just decided to homeschool, and it's been kind of a thing. And
Well, actually, if it's a public school and the parents are taxpayers, it should be their right to play high school tennis.
yeah,
So homeschoolers in most places, they can play if they want to. They just don't want to.
right. No, exactly. Yeah, no, I think these boys just want to spend more time on the tennis court, I guess.
I remember the name Churchill High School.
Yeah, for sure. No, we played against Churchill, and I played for Reagan its first year, uh, when it first opened, and yeah, Churchill was kind of like they were the team to beat. Now Reagan is the best team. Actually, we'll see now that they're missing their top two.
5A, that's
6A now.
6A.
Yeah.
Yeah, John Peterson, before he transferred to Tyler Junior College, he was very successful at Churchill High School. That leads into another question. Back in the day, high school students playing tennis, and many times, like John Peterson, they had someone who was truly a tennis coach. But they had the last period, the tennis players didn't have to take phys ed, if my recollection is correct. But they met the last period of the day with the team. And then they could go off to the private coaches. But so I thought that was really good that the high school teams years ago actually went to practice. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I think it just depends on the school. I mean, there's definitely some different setups, with the different high schools in San Antonio on when they can come to practice, and we work with a few of the coaches. I know there's some female athletes that are looking to really maybe come to us really early in the morning and maybe try to push first period, so that they can have a little more time on court. So I mean, being the facility where everyone plays, we are able to kind of communicate with the coaches and try to figure out how we can all work together. I mean, we certainly don't want to discourage anyone at where we are from playing high school tennis.
High school tennis, in Texas, and it varies from obviously one state to the next. At one time, they had mixed doubles. They dropped it and they brought it back. And the teams play year round. So in the fall, I may have this backwards, but in the fall, it was similar to college tennis. They played individual tournaments. And then in the spring, it was a team tournament.
I think it's flipped.
Flipped?
I
Well,
think
yeah,
it's
I
flipped.
could be
I
wrong.
think
but
I think it's flipped now, but I could be wrong. I want to say team for high school is the fall and individual is the spring.
I think that expression to play for something bigger than yourself, to high school players to learn to be on a team. Now you have so many foreign players playing on your college team. Some of them have already played club tennis, so they have a leg up if an American kid hasn't played high school tennis. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean that's also kind of the thing about getting transfer students. You know, they're seasoned a little bit. You know, they've played on team. Of course, I don't know. Maybe unless it's a junior college where they've spent the 2 years, there's a reason they're transferring for one, right? You know, so maybe it wasn't the best experience. Maybe it was.
And to go back, is there conflict with the courts? How many high schools share the 18 courts at Blossom?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, they don't practice there, but there's always matches and things like that. But the season's relatively short, so there's a window where we're kind of yeah, we're a little scrunched. Um, for me, a lot of times those are blessings in disguise. You know, whenever we have less courts, we're able to get creative and do other things. Maybe we have a bigger technical court, and you know, which we probably should have more often. And you know that we always wind up making do on those or doing more doubles or something like that. You know, so I don't really sweat it too much.
For 10 years, I what would I say? I was in charge of a women's team, a junior college women's team. I was a director. Um, different coaches over 10 years. The last 5 years, it was Chad Burial.
Okay.
He came in from Ferris State. He's been a guest on our podcast. He may have been the youngest college coach ever. And he won a national championship. With that, it was interesting. This was not Chad, but a coach was suspended, not terminated, but suspended. So I took the team to nationals.
When was this? Like what?
I don't need to pinpoint the date because you may know who the coach was who was
Okay.
terminated. But
Got it.
it was for me. I go back decades. It was a long time ago, and so we went out to A&M, and at that time, the A&M women, you know, teams can be up and down, and they were a little bit down at this point in time, but they made the tournament, and they did so well. Not only made the tournament, but they hosted the I know they changed it one time. I think they've gone back to 16 teams go to the main event, but
Yeah.
so the round of 64 and round of 32 were being played at A&M. So the junior college nationals was A&M, and we show up, and I was probably the only coach who wasn't upset. Everyone was upset that the junior college nationals was not going to be held at the stadium site. I'm getting around to we played on these we played on these high school facilities, and again, some of them were junior high. I couldn't believe the quality of courts because I had lived in Texas for 10 years, but the junior college team that I was involved with was in Tampa, Florida. And most high schools in Florida don't have their own tennis courts.
Yeah.
Is that true where you are? Was that just part of the way it is in the Texas A&M College Station area? Do they have really good high school facilities in San Antonio?
I think it depends on the district, but for the most part, I'd say yeah. I mean, most of the schools have 6 courts, and you know where they do their practices, and then they all come to Blossom, which is a beautiful facility for the matches. So yeah, I think so.
I know you have some questions for me, but let me come back to so our listeners. I've known you, I'd say 10 years. Take a guess. And in the beginning, it was just you calling, asking me questions.
Still that.
Still that.
Still that.
But
yeah,
you were teaching from the time you started asking me questions. But at one point, you had an apparel shop, a retail shop. Tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, it was called Winwell Tennis. Man, I kind of just fell into it. I think I was teaching, and I had like a little contract with Babylon. I was trying to get them to let me sell it online. I was so ignorant about like what the rules were, how difficult that would be. I mean, they were just like, no, you can't do that. And I think what happened, as I remember it, was I was talking to the rep, and he said, "You know what? There's a lady who has a store, and I think she's selling it, and you might be able to get a good deal on it." And I just happened to be driving by like as I was on the phone, so I just like popped in and talked to her. And I think just talking with my wife and stuff, we said, let's do it. And I got kind of excited about it, and I went in with like no experience, I don't even have a college degree, and, certainly not a degree in business. And so, yeah, I went in and bought it and was there for like a year, and then changed the name, called it Winwell Tennis, and had it for 6 years. I signed the lease the day for the new place. Like I had owned the store a year and changed the name and took it to a much better location. And I signed the lease the day my son was born. So it was like a crazy,
8 years ago.
yeah. It was a crazy, crazy stressful time. Um, and there were things I loved about it. I loved meeting people and talking tennis. I taught through it the entire time, which was probably a mistake because I don't know if I was ever all in. I mean, I was working a ton of hours, but I always loved teaching, and so I continue to teach through it. Although I scaled back, and it was highly stressful, and it's a very difficult business. But you meet a ton of great people, and I learned a lot about you know I learned 10,000 ways not to run a business. That's for sure. Um, but it was a good time. I mean, we had a few break-ins. I remember that being really stressful. And then COVID, that was stressful. And I think it was after the second break-in, and we were in a nice area. Like it wasn't, it was just odd. But I think after the second break-in, I had to kind of decide, and with COVID and everything, I had to kind of decide, okay, do I want to kind of reinvest and redo more inventory, or do I need an exit strategy? And there happened to be a buyer, and so we wound up selling the business. And gosh, there is not I miss almost nothing about doing that now that I'm out of it. When I was in it, and even when I was selling it, I was kind of sad. Part of me was kind of sad. But now that I'm out of it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I'm not doing that anymore. It's just, I'm spending a lot of hours on court, as most coaches are. But it's so much more fulfilling than, you know, being like, you're definitely a size 10. It's like, and then the shoes come back. So that I don't miss that stuff. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, not at
Well, it's
all.
interesting with pro shops. There's a curriculum I ran years ago for tennis teachers. We had a course called Pro Shop Management.
Wish I would
Uh,
have taken it.
remember the late Tommy Fahey, he loved Pro Shop Management. He would come in and run a workshop for us. All the tennis books I have, I only have a few that even cover Pro Shop Management. It's interesting to this day. Well, people will still call it, well, he's in the pro shop, and the pro shop is not really a shop anymore.
Yeah, yeah,
It's kind of like there's no corner hardware store anymore.
yeah. No, stringing has to be huge. I mean, your stringing needs to pay your overhead is what I've kind of learned, and that keeps your repeat business, coming in and stuff like that. But yeah, just even talking about it, I'm so glad I'm so
So
glad I'm
you,
out of that
so you
business.
probably can string rackets in your sleep.
I'm not the best. I am certified. I am a master racket technician, but
USRSA.
yeah. I'm probably late on my dues for that. But yeah, it's funny. There's a guy named Rich Flores who owns First Serve Tennis, And when I owned the business, I mean, we were like competitors. We didn't talk at all. And you know, uh, I think after I sold the business, I gave him a call, and he's been as nice as can be, and we get along great now. And he's like been a huge help to the team. But it's just kind of funny because yeah, when I owned the store, it was like, yeah, we don't talk to each other. But now he's been awesome. So
Title of a book. At this stage of my life, everything reminds me of something.
yeah,
And when you mentioned Babolat, labor of love, when we put the tennis backboard together, we were not the mastermind. It was originally, it came out in the 70s, and it was called The Tennis Partner, The Tennis Mate. It had two different names in two different places. And there was a patent war. And I was told that tennis mate was USA, the Swedes as tennis partner, tennis mate, tennis partner. But I remember, Bobby McKinley had so much to do with John Newcomb's world class tennis player, son Seth.
yeah, good friend of mine.
His
Oh yeah, really good friend of mine. Yeah, yeah,
with Babolat. So I remember calling him up and
yeah.
saying, "Hey, would Babolat be interested in putting their name on this GreatBase backboard?" But we didn't have a patent, and I wasn't really interested in going down that route. I was advised USRSA. Come back to that. When I was training tennis teachers in a formal setting, I believe we had 9 certifications. I mean, CPR, PTR, USPTA, the umpire, the USTA, and on and on. But the most difficult one was the stringing. You just couldn't BS as a stringer. That was back in the day where you had to pre-stretch nylon or the wooden racket, burn the holes, and
Yeah, that I wouldn't know how to do. I mean, I know how to pre-stretch string, but
somebody who worked for me years ago, a sharp guy with the Fair State, Dave Bone. He was my administrative director. You wouldn't want to say administrative assistant or coordinator, director, sharp guy. He bought that at one time. But is that up and going? I have lost totally not in that world anymore.
the
The
US,
USRC.
I think so. I probably should know so, but I haven't kept up with it. We got Mark Gonzalez, who is kind of like the stringing guru, to come and certify us, and I always called him with stringing questions. Of course, uh, I don't have a huge interest in stringing. I don't love stringing. I don't love string. I don't. I mean that. So for having a pro shop, that wasn't. Of course, I learned a lot against my own will. I just had to um, learn a lot about rackets and stringing and all that kind of stuff. But Mark was kind of the go-to guy in terms of learning anything and everything about string. And
I would guess that in very few tennis teachers, the percentage, it used to be around 50-50, but I would think even less tennis teachers are certified. I do think more so um, where tennis teaching is more structured, like in indoor centers. But the certainly
certified to string or certified?
certified to teach. But
Oh
I think
yeah,
less people are certified to string than people are certified to teach because of the liability insurance.
yeah.
Many places to work, you have to be a member of this country. You have to be a member of the PTR, USPTA just to work. So because you have liability insurance.
Right, right.
But
You're,
I don't think people are really even asked when they're interviewed, "Are you a certified stringer?" I think it's kind of a bonus, a feather in their cap.
I agree. Yeah, I absolutely
One
agree.
question on stringing. I know you have tennis questions, and we can go back and forth. It's been so many years since I played tennis, but you always hear this oh, the strings have changed the game. Having been in the pro shop business and hearing all the chatter about string, you just said that you're not so into string, but what do you think of that when people say, "Oh, strings have changed the game"? It used to be more so rackets have changed the game. I know Andres Barbosa made a comment on one of our podcasts that the rackets have been pretty much the same, last 25, 30 years. But what do you think of the chatter on the strings changing so much?
Well, I mean, I definitely think with the invention of poly, I mean, certainly, yeah, you can get kind of ridiculous amounts of spin, more so than you were able to before polyester. I think the misconception about polyester, people think it's more power, but it's the opposite. It's actually more control, and so it's more control. It allows you to I say if you get more power because you have a poly, because I used to hear that in pro shop all the time. "Well, I need a poly. I need a poly because it's more powerful." Um, I think it might be a byproduct if you feel like you can swing faster and swing harder because you've got a string that allows you more control. Maybe you are hitting the ball harder. But poly is a control string that, but you actually have to have a certain amount of racket speed to get the snapback effect of a polyester. So when you have young kids playing with polyester, maybe even because they're a good junior, a lot of times it's a bad idea. You should hybrid the strings or something like that. Play with like, a multi-filament. One thing I will say about hybriding strings is if you do that, don't hybrid a multi-filament string with like a rough polyester, then you're just going to tear into your string. You really want to get like a rounded poly without, you know, um, that isn't going to rub against the string as much. So
In the 7 years, did you deal with gut?
yeah, we did. I don't remember who it was, but we had one guy who would bring in his own gut that he would get off like, I mean, he was a nice guy too, and I'll have to think about it, but who he was, but he would bring in his own gut that he'd get off like eBay or something. And every time we put it on the machine, it would snap. And for like the first 2 or 3 times, like we covered it, and so after that, I was like, dude, you can't bring me this anymore. Like this doesn't, you know, this isn't working. And we, in anytime we strung with our gut, it never happened. But it's $50 a set, so you snap somebody's string, it's a mess.
So when you made the transition from running your own business to being a college coach, you got to stay in San Antonio. What are your thoughts on San Antonio?
I mean, my family's there, and I like San Antonio. I'm a big Spurs fan. It's a big city, but it feels kind of like a small city. You're in kind of your little pockets. I think it's a great city. Of course, I mean, I've been there so long. Part of me would love to be somewhere else. We just took a trip to Europe and visited my sister-in-law in London and went to the south of France. It's like, yeah, the world's pretty big.
Yeah.
Come up here and it's like beautiful trees and mountains and I mean, so yeah, part of me is like kind of like, okay, I've been there a while, but I really like the setup I have. I like the challenges of NAIA and the challenges of kind of trying to improve a team and build a women's team. I mean, when I took over, we didn't even have a full women's team. We had four female athletes. So, I'm there for a minute. So,
Well, San Antonio, great people everywhere. I've spent time in San Antonio with junior tournaments and then the erotic tennis academies.
right.
So I, um, I was a big fan of Davy Crockett back when I used to watch Walt Disney every Sunday night. So tell us about the differences between coaching juniors and coaching college players. And I think it's great. I mean, I've told so many college players. I remember Bruce Burke, who's now at Texas, and Craig Tiley. We ran a program at Illinois more than once, but I remember telling those guys, never stop teaching kids, never stop teaching juniors. Because once you stop, this is like match play. If you stop playing tennis, if you stop playing tennis, stop playing tournament tennis, you lose your skills. And
Sure.
I think so many college coaches are not connected to teaching. They don't teach, and even in their summer camps. It used to be years ago that tennis coaches, that was their bread and butter. They had a very small salary, and they had to really their passion for the game. They had to survive by having a very successful summer camp.
Right. Yeah. So the difference is, obviously college players, you're working within their game, a lot more than juniors. You're trying to develop them, trying to give them good fundamentals, a great base. You know, I think that's probably the biggest difference. I love the days are long as every teaching pro experiences, but for me also it's a bonus because my son gets out of school at 3 o'clock and then he kind of comes to the junior program. So getting home, he comes to the junior program, does his homework, and then gets on the court about 4:15 or so, and we're done at 7:30. But those 3 hours, even though he's not really with me at all, but he's at least there for those 3 hours, so it doesn't feel like I'm away from family all day. So that's a bonus. And I love the idea of building something. And so, when I got to Blossom, it certainly wasn't, in despair. It was already up and running and doing pretty well. The idea was to build a little bit more of a competitive program, and it went in waves. It's not that never was a competitive program. They had a lot of problems with, like, players would kind of get better, and then leave to the whatever the flavor of the month was. And so the idea was to kind of create a pathway where they would stick around. Um, so with juniors, yeah, it's a lot of fundamental work, a lot of character building, which is all fun. It's a challenge. It's a challenge with it being an after school program. I think of us being here, putting in these 10-hour days, which you can do a little more in the summer, but you know you can just get so much more done when you're at these kind of immersion camps. And also when you have competent coaches. Not that my coaches aren't competent, but with whatever program, obviously it helps to have competent coaches. And as far as college, I'm still navigating that whole situation. We have a huge, we've got a men's team and a women's team, and there are times during the week where they practice together, and it's two of us. Luckily, we're all able to spread out on the courts. There's a huge disparity in level. Um, trying to kind of put band-aids on certain technical flaws and things like that. I think about our we made a big emphasis on moving forward in at the college level, trying to play two up and doubles on the men's and women's side, you know and I think about the backhand volley specifically. There's a lot of, like, downward play in the backhand volley. And you know I've got a doubles team I put out there this year, Johan and Guido. And they both, you can tell they both just didn't play the net that much. But they both, it wasn't that they had big serves, but they were consistent on their serves, and they were both good returners, and they both fought. And so trying to get them to volley, right, was a challenge. I mean, we did a ton of I just put someone at the baseline, and I just feed the ball and just say, okay, I'm just gonna just rifle the ball at him at the net, and just let him work on just absorbing, and just keeping the swing simple. And then with the volley, I had him volley with two hands. I just said, on the backhand volley, just put the other hand on it.
It's so bad, yeah.
just put the other hand on it, because if you're gonna make a big cut, it's not gonna work.
Too much
It's
calculation.
not gonna work. So just put the other hand on it. When we try, and when we took time, could they make that little bit of a grip adaptation to try to just square the racket up, so that it wouldn't cut the ball as much. And they're working on that. And that's something, we gave them drills. We gave them Made to Be Great. Just work on it. But if you can't do it, just put the other hand on the racket and try to square it up.
No, with I think so many young kids, we always show that film of young Pete Sampras hitting a two-handed backhand volley, and basically say, as a young player, you have a better chance to learn how to hit a one-handed backhand volley by initially hitting two. A young girl here from Utah with her brother, who's become a great tennis teacher, with, yes, every day practices a one-handed backhand volley. But you're 10 years old, when you drill and you play, you're better off to play with a two-handed backhand volley. Let me go back to the public facility. You said building the Blossom's competitive edge, or competitive players, high performance, whatever it's called. That was much easier back in the day when people took private lessons. And then generally a public facility like that, that's where the top players would congregate and just play. But now I think so many of the so-called top players, one, I don't think overall they really know their level, but they're finding ways to, not be part of a program.
Sure.
They customize, and they're doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that, or they perhaps have their own pro. Is San Antonio, you get in trouble for this? Is San Antonio as a city overall, collectively? Obviously, there's a number of coaches in a city that size. Are they competing with Dallas and Houston? Are they doing a very good job overall? That means the city developing players.
I think so. I think so.
There's that young girl at North Carolina.
Yeah, Fiona. Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, I mean,
Last
she's
name is
Crawley.
Crawley.
Yeah, no, she's a warrior. Um, no, I think San Antonio has a lot of competent coaches, and they do a real good job. I have a buddy of mine, Adrian Valdez. Who was a phenomenal player. Played well into his 40s, and it was number one in Texas for like 20 years. And just
In men's open or
yeah,
age
men's
groups?
open, men's open.
Wow.
Yeah. No, he can play, and now he's training his daughter, and his son. His daughter's doing really well. He's got her playing up, and I talk to him almost daily, so we go back and forth on all kinds of stuff. But his daughter's doing really well. She's 14. I don't know what I mean. I want to say she's probably won in Texas for the 14s, but she's playing the L1s and 18s. She won the Grand Slam, the Texas Grand Slam.
Sectionals, yeah.
Yeah. And so she's doing well. I tease him. I tell him he's the best third base coach I know, because he kind of gets all the good players and gets them together. But he's good. He does a great job. I mean,
if one of the parents, say in this case the father, is such a good player, it's just osmosis. I mean, they're bored into it.
Right. And it's hard with him specifically, he just wakes up every day and just lives it. I mean, tennis is on the brain all the time, which I love. We can talk tennis all day.
Does he work at Blossom or?
No, he runs the San Antonio Tennis Academy. And yeah, they're there. They train at Alamo Heights. So he does a good job. And Michael Castillo over at Fit does a good job. It's funny. There was a high school coach. I did before you actually had a podcast. You and I did an interview similar to this. We didn't have the
remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't have the fancy mics or anything like that. But I sat there with my computer and had 100 questions for you, and had this coach. It's a high school coach there, and he came up to me. He goes, "Yeah, I saw your podcast." He goes, "Man, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why'd you say there were no good coaches in San Antonio?" He's like, da da da. And I said, "What?" And it took me aback. And I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "I saw your interview with Steve. Why'd you say that?" And I was just kind of, I mean, it really, and I said, "There's no way I would have said that. There's no way I would have said that." And so immediately I get on, I look up the interview, and he had what I said was, I said, "There are a lot of good coaches in San Antonio, but there's not someone doing what you're doing here. And how would you recommend I do that?" And I think totally misinterpret. So, I went back and I said, "Hey dude, you totally misquoted me. That's not what I said. I said completely the opposite." And he goes, "Oh yeah, but what you're implying is this and this, and it's elitist." And I said, "No, dude, you're misinterpreting. What I'm saying is, you're having people hit off the cone, and obviously it's a lot more than that, but you're having people hit off a cone, you're having people swing socks, you're having people do these things, which a lot of times can be counterintuitive to earning a paycheck. If you're, if it's not,
Yeah, you get most situations you get fired if you do that.
right. It's not high octane. And so I was more asking for advice of like, okay, unless you have credibility of coaching like a ton of top juniors, and you're telling someone to swing a sock or do these things or whatever, go through all these really slow routines, etc., how do you sustain it? Right. And that was what my original question was. And so, after I'm still annoyed. I'm still annoyed that he called me, because not only that, did he completely misrepresent what I said. I mean, he got it wrong. I was like, there's a lot of competent coaches in San Antonio. And so there's a lot of ways of doing things. I mean, you can be just a great motivator and get someone pretty far when, that doesn't have the purest ball striking skills.
Well, I like the breakdown where coaching is a human relationship. It's a magic. It's a chemistry. There's lots of great coaches, but I think really overall, teaching is information transfer.
Yeah, I love that.
And when and I think especially at college coaches at the high end, where are they really successful because of development, or are they really successful because of recruitment?
Right,
And
right, right.
and coming back to we talk about Braden in every podcast is you measure a program by how the worst kid in the program's doing,
No, I love that too.
and not players attract players, and now all the way down to the grassroots level, there's a lot of backroom deals.
Yeah.
And Nick Bollettieri, the late Nick Bollettieri, if we have it scheduled to just have a podcast and just talk about Nick. I don't think there was enough things said about Nick throughout the tennis world when he passed away. He created a great environment, and I think he deserves to be in the International Tennis Hall of Fame. With Nick, again, there was a backroom deal. Before that, there was no academy. He went bankrupt numerous times, and Mark McCormick, the late Mark McCormick, IMG bailed him out, and he'd see somebody hit the ball really well and put him on a scholarship.
Right,
So,
right, right.
I think there's too much, as you said, the third base coach, the person, and that's not something that we really appreciate when someone's just at a tournament and they're handing their business card out to kids who can already play. We need more first base coaches. And I think that's one thing about Europe is you coach the players who are at your club.
Right, right,
You're
right.
you're not really recruiting so much.
No, absolutely. I think that was interesting when I went to France, and got to watch one of my players who was playing for his club, and it's interesting, when you go to see his club. I mean, it's like aside from like it being beautiful and in the mountains and this, it's four courts with like no windscreens and this, and that's his club. I mean, it's very um humble, and it's not this big giant country club, but it was interesting. The mayor of the city came out to the final, um that he was playing in the final, and the mayor of the city came out, and so that was cool. He lost, but he got injured. uh, so
We've said it before on the podcast: is the pro make the place, or does the place make the pro? I recently, a college coach sent a player to me from Manhattan, and it was just circumstantial. We filmed on a player from Hawaii, a real hardworking kid who, with his mom, where they're living, they have two tennis courts, and one of the courts, the net was all beat up, and it was not the son, but the father said about me. He goes, "Well, he can't be that good if he's teaching on that court." So, yeah. Well, you 100 questions. You have some questions for me. What questions you have for me?
No, I mean, I've got a lot of questions. I think I'm a fan of the podcast, so I'm happy to be on it. But you talk, and you've had some legendary coaches on the podcast, and you've also talked about some legendary coaches. One that was fascinating to me was Jim Verdick. A soft spot in my heart, being NAIA, having a big roster, having the kind of the ladder, and the whole idea of developing, right? Not just recruiting, but developing players, and how he did that. And so, um, when I came here, just to preface the audience, when I came here, I was kind of asking you for you had recorded. I guess it was he came to Tennis Tech for, what was it? Just a like a weekend or something like that.
Well, yeah, you certainly was there more than one time with Verdict. Any of our guests, they were 25-hour workshops.
Oh, cool.
They usually come in on a Thursday night, but they would go Friday, Saturday, half day Sunday.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, just I'd love to hear more about Verdict. I mean, I know, you know, you gave me the video, which I'm really excited about, and I've already kind of started taking some notes.
I like the fact that from our podcast, love it, that his son Doug was on a podcast,
Yeah.
and he read a letter that his father wrote to incoming freshmen. Or you make a few comments on that.
Well, I ripped off that letter immediately. I gave
Well,
credit.
yeah, you give credit too, but
Yeah.
that's education and sharing, and that's what it's all
No,
about. You just want to plagiarize it.
no, absolutely no. I certainly gave
Yeah, no, I
credit.
saw that. Yeah,
But no, the letter was so powerful. It was so powerful. It was just really setting the tone. And so it was really cool. No, and I have a letter that takes a few of course there's some things in there about our program and my expectations and you know what I want. But then there's a few lines that are directly pulled from that, which it says at the bottom, hey, listen, if you want to check out the original letter that Jim Verdict, go check out.
I
It's
appreciate
on
you
your
saying it because people can circle back and go to the podcast that we dedicated one or two. I'm going to guess two podcasts to Jim Verdict. His son was on, and but we're now into our fourth year, but we don't have show notes. We should go. We want to through fundraising be able to go back and do things like that. Is um, it's like, well, yeah, okay, we have 156 podcasts. Well, for 3 years, well, yeah, listen to all of them.
yeah.
But just someone like yourself as a college coach, um, I won't guess because I could be wrong. I don't like really to guess. You eliminate guesswork. But one of the juniors who recently came to visit had a T-shirt on that you would love because the T-shirt just said, and it had the heart. It just said, I love Jim Verdict."
Oh, really?
Well, where'd you get that shirt? He goes, "Oh, my coach had some made up." It's fantastic.
That's cool. No, I think that letter, I mean, it kind of going into it, just setting the tone for the freshmen. I really liked. Actually, I don't know if this was. There were two things that Coach Doug mentioned. I think one was something that he had. I think he had a poster up on the wall or something like that,
Yeah.
in the locker room, and it was, what did you do to get 1% better? But what did you do to get your teammate 1% better? And I thought that was great. Just there's some sections on just the fact that any kind of scrutiny that he gives you, is for your own personal gain and how like you can improve and dedicate. I don't want to misquote it, but read the letter. You should everybody should read the letter. It's with whatever sport you're in, but I think it was something along the lines of dedication through perseverance is going to be your best friend through this.
Say that again.
Dedication through perseverance, and
Oh,
and
thanks.
I want it's something like that. I mean, I could probably read a portion of it, but yeah. So that video that you let me watch. I know you were saying, oh, it's grainy and this, but I mean, I love it. I just turn the volume up and listen, and it's just great to hear a guy like that talk. Like, yeah, you mentioned that too. You just said, I love hearing this guy talk. There's
Yeah,
coaches.
For our listeners, I was sitting next Yvonne, who's doing so much to help us with a GreatBase. We have a pretty extensive library, and I know Jim's granddaughter reached out to me, and then we were capable of sending her copies of the tape. And then I know you had asked for that, but we certainly could be more streamlined. But you finally get to see some of that Jim Verdict tape. That's great.
No, it was great, and just I mean, we were talking about it earlier today. Just how coaches talk, to the players and the culture they create. And another coach that we can talk about in a minute who has been a huge influence on me is Chuck Creasy, and he certainly is someone who can use loaded language and and things like that to kind of get something across to his players. And
One thing with Chuck, to interrupt,
yeah,
we talked about show notes. I would love to go back just with our podcast, just with quotes from Chuck Creasy's mother. we interviewed a high school coach. Um, he must have sent me. I have it. It was a book basically of Chuck Creasy quotes, one-liners,
I would love that.
and I have it. So it's
With Jim, uh, Coach Verdick, I should say. He, one of the things I found fascinating when watching that video was he had a little on the chalkboard. He had a little drawing of the van and the seats in the van. Do you remember this?
yeah.
And so he was just talking about his culture and just love hearing the guy talk, like you said. And he would say, he talked about, here's what you got to do, or here's what we do. Is it, do you put the guys in the van by their rank on the team, or their seniority and what year they started to contribute to the Redlands? And by contribute, that is the first time you traveled and did this with the team, and that was kind of how you did it. And he said,
Earn your stripes.
right. And he said, it's just something we do. And and he said, what did he say? He said, if our number 3 guy gets in, takes a seat, all the guys, they will physically get him out. And, so that just hearing stuff like that is just gold. And
I think one thing about team coaching, I'm at a point where, you look back, and at one point, I was thinking about, okay, that could be a career path, but I thought, well, you got to have more of an impact working with 8-year-olds versus 18-year-olds. But with team coaching is very powerful. I'm always telling junior tennis players, parents don't get to give out grades. So it's unconditional love. They're not giving their kid an F. And junior coaches, they really don't have the power of a team coach. The team coach has who's going to play.
Right.
Who's going to play? Mom and dad are going to write the check for the tournaments. They're going to cross their fingers. And the kid is going to go out and play the same way. We always say over and over again, the connection between the bench and the brain.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's probably the best way to sum up Jim Verdick is his players who were not in the lineup. They were not just on the sideline working as a cheerleader. They're charting matches and they're contributing. And, some people would say with Jim Lair, he came out of his mother's womb with a baseball cap, a clipboard, and a whistle.
Jim Verdick. And
Yeah. Jim Lair would say that. And
okay.
Jim Lair would say that about Jim Verdick. And, but with team tennis, Jim Verdick, there's so many things. Kid drops a racket. At a Verdick practice, everybody in the place drops a racket, because if a kid drops a racket, they all know they're going to do kangaroo jumps.
Right.
So one kid drops his racket, all the rackets drop, and they do the kangaroo jumps without even being told. It's just the culture. But yeah, I do think that, how many times can you tell somebody the same thing over and over again and say, hey, you're going to be on the bench, you're not going to play. Coaches can be abusive with that as well, but
sure.
Go ahead.
No, I think if you could elaborate on, you mentioned that Jim was just charting everything. Like immediately when they played mini tennis, he would chart who won and who lost mini tennis. And so that's one. And then just an FYI, we use the Jim Verdick 10-minute warm up all the time. I loved how it's just such a very focused, specific way, to get players warmed up and get them locked in immediately. So we use that in the practice all the time. It's one of the first things I'll teach the freshmen when they come in, and or I'll have the other players teach the freshmen. And so we got that off Tennis Intelligence Applied. But
well, with that on Tennis Intelligence Applied, listeners could go to that. Actually, Doug said that that's why his father was so successful. He always was making adjustments and improving, because when he played for his father, they didn't do the 10-minute warm up. Jim Verdick, when he sat in front of the television to watch a pro match, he charted it. He always charted it.
Wow.
When the players are playing move up, move down, and situational competitive drills. He's walking around with his clipboard. He's keeping a score on everything. I asked him one time, "Don't your players get tired of that?" And he said, "If they do, I know I don't want them playing when it comes down to nationals. If they get tired of competing in practice, I don't want them playing when it comes down to what's going to happen in May."
I love that. So, would he, other than set play or like a, let's say, bump up, bump down mini tennis? I mean, is he keeping track? Because I think Andy referenced something about how you could get X amount of points in a day in his practice, and the points, um,
Oh no, it
kind
wasn't
of
just paid day by day, but he was um, no, he was always thinking in this, how to make the player accountable. So where they were as a freshman with what their vertical jump was or what their mile time was, and he was going to go to the track, and he grew up at a different time.
right,
No
right.
TVs, and he was at three sports at Stanford. And he coached at Stanford twice. He was the national fitness champion for the Marines. So um,
Yes,
amazing guy, and yeah, it's great to have his name resurface, and that's one thing we want to do a better job of is going back and saying, okay, if it was just okay, 10 principles from Jim Verdick, just 10, brevity, clarity, and coaches need to learn these. 10-minute warm up drill could be one.
yeah,
It could be just today. Jensen Rideout, was teaching us um, how he called it Cornell notes,
yeah. It's
from
great.
Cornell University, and we got to go back and have him do and show. Okay, show us that again. Uh, with, but part of the Cornell notes is a section of his quotes.
Yep.
Okay, I'll take this and call it a quote. And Jim Verdick, don't you want to get 1% better?
The first quote this probably wasn't the first, but one of the ones that stuck out. The very first time I met you, I remember we're in Cincinnati, and I think I overheard you say, "What happens to chickens?" Said what? They get eaten. That was one of the ones that
Well,
made my notes.
again, I was born into jackocracy, meaning that um, older brothers. My father was an engineer, a civil engineer, but he was just a fan of hockey and coached the little kids. Yeah, when you go in the corner first and get the puck, your reward is it's a car accident.
Yeah,
You're going to get hit, um, and you don't want to be a chicken. So when I think of people not going to the net, I think of that. It's just like you're not going to the corner after the puck,
yeah,
or a couple of years ago, a really famous quarterback, there was a fumble and he did dive for the ball, and that's a chicken.
yeah. It's we were getting on Matisse today. We played a game where you spread rackets out. We had 6 rackets out, and we put 5 balls there in the middle. And it was a fitness game. We put 5 balls. That's kind of like a spider drill, but it's competitive. Competitive with each other. So you put 5 balls in the middle, 6 rackets. You got to go. You got to grab a ball. You got to put it on your racket, and then you got to go steal a ball off someone else's racket. You can only hold 1 ball at a time, and then if you get 2 balls on your racket, you win. And Matisse at the beginning of and there's something to be said about strategy, right? But he saw 5 balls out and he stood there. And I said, "Dude, what are you doing?" "Oh, there's only 5. Let me let everybody else get the balls." And then, I said, "Well, if you're gonna do that, you at least need to go stand over by someone else's racket, so when they set the ball down, you can go grab." I said, "Because the way you're looking right now, you just look like a chicken." And then
Of course, he has a great coach. He sent him here from Montreal as a coach because we had canceled the summer here. The coaches, knew I was up here and he just begged, can he come? And yeah, he needs to learn how to compete
oh, but he
with.
did great. He did great.
But I said to you and Jensen, I guess it was just the three of us. At one point, we had 4 coaches. we're going over the short ball range and all the advantage of hitting underspin backhand approach. And I said, do any of your players hit it like that?
No, it was beautiful.
Unbelievable
Beautiful
technique.
stroke. Yeah.
But, and he's looking at me where, we need to teach him how to compete. Even going back, okay, rally 100 balls, just keep the ball in play.
Yeah.
Like you said earlier today, I was going through, we're talking about the underspin backhand. I said, well, if it's an emergency shot, and we do teach these specialty shots and emergency shots. And for our listeners, you said that's what people need to know about the GreatBase, because we are, people get a very quick glimpse and go, it looks so mechanical. They're drop hitting balls, they're shadow swinging. It looks like the 60s. But the way he hits a tennis ball, I mean, what's beautiful about that is a couple coaches in Montreal that we've trained have done a great job with him. And I complimented one of the coaches I talked to recently, and he said, basically the older brother, because he's here with his younger brother, the older brother taught the younger player just based on circumstances and what group he's in, and the younger brother also. But again, there's always something lost in the translation. That's where it'd be great to have a French-speaking coach at the moment. When you call him a chicken, and then they get to look at you like, chicken?
No, and he did a great job. But we were having a little fun with him in that drill, and he but no, he hits the ball well. Going back to something I think that is misunderstood about the GreatBase is, someone might watch a tape and say, oh, but look, the pros are going down and off to the side on an underspin backhand or something like that. So much of it is them improvising, and it's situational, and so when you mentioned today, it's like, no, yeah, there are times where, look, you got to play this kind of emergency shot, and you got to even put some like side spin on the the underspin backhand.
So like Roger Federer, how he would fade the ball to the side tee and make a two-hander move up and hit the ball up to him, and then you just transition like a cat.
Yeah, so it's like we can work on all those things. There's emergency shots. How do you categorize it? It's specialty shots, emergency shots, trick shots, basic shots. Am I missing one?
No, that's it.
Yeah, and
one of the problems is that we get stuck on basic shots because kids don't have basic shots.
No, absolutely.
And then also too is that it is a call. Kids 15 years old that say they want to play college tennis, and their game's a train wreck. And the human spirit, you can go back to the drawing board, and we have documentation. We have people who have done that. But when people come to visit, it's not like we're talking about ghosts or we're making things up. We have the documentation. Okay, let me go back and show you how this player used to hit the tennis ball. See, and that is found within tennis intelligence applied in our content.
But you just have to dig. You have to watch the content.
That's another thing too, is that we, and that like those Instagram 1 minute here is that here's a pre-post. Here's a pre-post. We need to do a better job with that.
Well, even some of the coaches, I think, I was just reading a bunch of articles on tennisplayer.net. Yeah. And, even the coaches, even like a Rick Macy, in an article he posted, would agree that, and if he is starting a kid off, he's going to start him off in an Eastern grip. He's going to start him off. Now he might take him to 4, but he was just mentioning the advantages of starting a kid off in an Eastern grip. And, I think a lot of coaches that are competent aren't against starting players off in an Eastern grip and, having the palm, be basically the extension of the racket.
I think you have to look at the positives. Someone called me up not too long ago, and they really want to help out with a GreatBase. Oscar Wagner. I met Oscar in the 70s. He has a book. I can make a joke about it. Learn tennis in 2.5 hours. I really got a kick out of you filming our library that's not even in shelves.
No, that library is, for the listeners, you know, they just moved in. Not to interrupt your story, hold
No,
on to
go
that
ahead.
thought, but uh, you know, they just moved in over here, up here to Virginia, and in Steve's room, he has his collection of books, and there must have been 500 tennis books for some,
Yeah.
maybe not that many, maybe 300. I don't know. How many do you think you have?
Oh, there's 700.
700.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'm looking forward to Braden's library. Mike McLaughlin says there's another 150 on the way, but I've lost quite a few books too because I used to, when I was at Tennis Tech, this academic program, I used to lend the books out, but they're just,
Yeah.
great people. A lot of times, it just doesn't come back. It's like lending out a sandwich.
No, it was unbelievable. I told you, I said, yeah, you're really making me realize how little I know about the sport. But there was everything in there, you know, from psychology books. There was a really interesting one that said, it was a physics and a calculus book, and on the front it said property of Vic Braden,
Yeah.
which is so on brand for for him. At least from what I've heard, the stories I've
Oh, for
heard.
sure. Oscar Wagner, um, very charismatic. And I don't know Oscar very well, but I was around in the 70s. I remember I had a van, and I can remember just listening to the cassette tapes of different tennis teachers, and Oscar loved it. It was at the Fort Lauderdale Tennis Club. This is when I was a tennis bum because I was told you got to learn how to play before you can teach. And I went through the hard yards doing that. And um, but Oscar, like the idea of snapping down on a serve, getting that toss out to the right, that comes from Oscar Wagner.
Yeah,
And I always say, I love how he says, uh, with mini tennis, for example, find the ball, touch the ball,
yeah, that's great.
find the ball, brush the ball. So it is an art form. But actually, this person sent me a clip, and it was from the 80s. Now, how they got a hold of that, and I was training coaches, and I haven't done this in a long time, but years ago, there was spanking and there was corporal punishment. There was always the fear of going to the principal's office and getting paddled. I mean, the South Africans for a long time, they were the last ones to stop corporal punishment, and you'd get paddled, and you go home and you get paddled for getting paddled. So I would get these kids lined up, say it's so and so's birthday, the coach, and it's really not their birthday. Kids get all excited, and I start, okay, this is how you generate force. Hold that racket higher, longer, swing away from your body. Make sure you straighten out snap that front leg straight. Because how many of the kids want to give him a paddle? It's his birthday. And the kids are all excited. And I said, that front shoulder, you don't want to pull out with that front shoulder. You want to decelerate that front shoulder, and you got to breathe out. And so they're all getting excited. And I go look at my watch and go, sorry, it's lunchtime. We got to go.
That's great.
But anyway, they showed a clip of this, and they were throwing me under the bus saying that I condone spanking. I'm not on any of these coach chats. One of the best stories for a coach chat was people taking shots at the GreatBase. And it was just circumstantial. Victor Lillo was very successful as a 12-year-old, winning the Orange Bowl. In all your visits, did you meet Victor Lillo?
I'd never met Victor. No.
So, you won the 12 USTA, won the Orange Bowl, he won the La Petite, and with my train of thought, you can help me out here. Brain cramp. I have.
Yeah, people criticizing the GreatBase.
Yeah. So yeah. Thank you. So I think that's more of a senior moment than a brain cramp thing. So Tom Stem, great guy who went through our program in Tyler, Texas. He was on this chat, and they're all bad mouthing, what he was doing, with the drill and the video, and then Tom Stem, he types in, he goes, "Do you know that kid just won the Orange Bowl?" And everybody deleted their comments. Everybody deleted their comments.
No, I love that.
Thanks for rescuing me on that.
No, all good. Yeah, I think you knew you were just seeing if I was listening.
Oh, there you go. There you go. That's
well, it's like what you said about two things come to mind with that. One, the Vic Braden line, I'll let my players loosen up after they win nationals, which I think is great. I think that's really good.
Working on it looks mechanical because we're working on mechanics.
No, that was the second thing I was going to say. Yeah, I mean, it's not that you will literally be sitting there holding your finish in the middle of a point. It's like, no, you're checking checkpoints. You're checking checkpoints. I sent you an old black and white John Wooden, film of him every UCLA practice. I mean, just players imagining jumping up to get a rebound. you know, it's like that just doesn't happen near as much in tennis, like to walk through. And I just think, I mean, I think there's so many factors. We don't have to go into all those. But one other coach I did want to talk to you about. I found in your library you actually had both copies. You had the old. I don't remember which one came first. If it was Total Tennis Training or if it was Coaching Tennis. But Coaching Tennis, this book is in my
I'm going to take a guess at it. Total Tennis first.
Total Tennis was first.
Hang on to that
Yeah,
thought.
yeah,
But
sure,
going
sure.
back to, I can remember a young coach I trained from England, and his father was a coach, and that's where you get some trouble, where you start changing kids. You're teaching them to teach tennis, and you're changing how they demo and such, and you're training what the father or mother taught them.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Uh-oh. So I remember the dad coming over, and he saw a film, and he was very critical of the film. And I let him go on and on because I was just letting him dig himself into a hole. He's going on and on. And I said, well, if you could just take another look at that tape, you see the court's soaking wet. You see that they're actually doing those drills in the rain. And it's like he was criticizing. I said, you see the puddles out there? Just that comes from Vandermeer, and so many other coaches. But Dennis, there's no thunder and lightning. We're going to stay out here and we're going to hit balls. Obviously you don't want to have people move around. So that's where static balance is. There's nothing but static balance when you get kids practicing on a hard court in the rain.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, yeah, that speaks a lot. That reminds me of, what was it, 2 days ago? We had a ton of rain here and everybody, packed up like they were going inside. And, there's a huge hill here. And, you got everybody from my son who's 8 years old and, just whines and cries all the time. And,
No,
and
let's
then,
go run. I mean,
yeah,
this is
yeah,
a great place to run.
yeah. And so, no, and then Josh, who's a workhorse, so you kind of got both ends of the spectrum there, and they you set one cone here and one cone there is pouring rain. You just had them run up and down that hill, but shockingly, my son loved it. I mean, that was the hardest I think I've ever seen him work in his life. Like, and I like you could tell he was exhausted, and he just kept pushing himself. It was like that
Oh,
was
that's great. That's another thing too, is you don't want to stratify. It's great to have big kids. I should say little kids be with big kids. Now, obviously, there has to be a compatibility factor. Is okay. We're going to spread out and play some sets. The 8-year-old goes this way and the 18-year-old goes that way. But there's times where, okay, let's bring them together and make this work.
no, that was great.
I want to say this. You mentioned Rick Macy. This is my confession that if you're a member of the USPTA or PTR, there's a code of conduct and what you're supposed to do. And I know Rick, I mean, he's been he's in the USPTA Hall of Fame, and he's definitely a USPTA member. I don't know if he's a PTR member, but the code of conduct is you're always supposed to if you introduce yourself as a fellow, say, USPTA member. But chapter of my life was going, and I think it's a great service they put together. I certainly could say the Battle of Boca tournament every weekend. Say, well, I wish the doubles wasn't so much. I wish the back draw wasn't to 4. But it's a great service. First and foremost, it's just great, because it's there. It's every weekend.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he has passion.
Yeah.
I mean, people take shots at his marketing signs. There's his name is over 300 times written on signs throughout the facility. I was there one time really early, and someone's wiping the signs down. It was Rick.
Yeah.
He loves the game. But yeah, so you can learn from everybody. But I do think there's too much emphasis on, I saw his name is Chris Lewitt. I read his book, The
Yeah.
Spanish Way, and I think he calls his podcast The Prodigy Maker. And I was flattered that someone sent it to me that he took maybe 15 minutes or whatever and was analyzing the GreatBase. He needs to come visit.
Yeah.
He just needs to come visit. You can't, look at the videotapes. And I know with your college player here, you asked me to finally say a few things about people that we've coached.
Right,
And I
right.
mean, I really mean coach. I mean, we have documentation, you know, players that are number one. I don't really think of myself having coached Peter Cobell. He played doubles with my son at Ohio State, but we have some pretty impressive video where he changed his strokes. Um, but now he's the head coach in Nebraska. And he definitely, I mean, I remember his parents being excited, and to the point where the next thing I know is they got the Syracuse coach to let the sister find some time within this tennis schedule to come and have a video made, and the younger brother. Um, but he was already playing at Ohio State.
Yeah.
And, people have seen the tape, and if he want to just hello Peter, if he wants to be successful in Nebraska, he should redshirt incoming freshman and go through what he went through with making those technical changes. But Jeremy Wertzman told me that, who's coach at Indiana. But I think when you start someone out and he was already a good player when I met him at 11, but that's a different type of coaching.
No, absolutely. No, it is. And it's
But
hard to do well.
with Macy, um, yeah, I don't quite understand. It's so much on the forehand, but players are using a smaller grip, and that's their game. And the brain, a person can become quite good at it if that's all they do.
Sure.
And
Sure.
their swing may be, inverted and get to the contact point and turn the doorknob, but they do that, and they believe in it as well. So there's the tangible and the intangible. But then what's missing is the person on the other side of the net's playing the same way.
Yeah,
They
that's
really are.
interesting.
And what's also missing is someone's going to come along and say, I'm going to be able to do it all. And that's where Alcaraz, he's a gift from God. It's
Yeah.
like this kid, he could be, really, and I don't want to be sacrilegious, but here's a guy who's going to could save tennis. But the problem is like Federer was so good as well. Djokovic is a great player. But if people really were to listen to say Roger, is I always had more confidence in my forehand than my volleys. And when he played so well in 2017, started using analytics. Coming back to my father, always told me I was chicken. I mean, those are the things that people need to hear. Or Djokovic wins the Australian. I don't know, what's he won it 10, 11 times. He takes the trophy and he says to Mr. Laver, who's in the stands, he goes, I know I'm supposed to come to the net more. I know I should come to the net more, and I'm working on it. And he's so much better at the net than he used to be.
Right.
But I don't think that you can listen to the sound bites from courtside, and you have to read. You have to read, and you have to read some more, and you got to listen. You got to be around it. But go ahead with Chuck. I love Chuck Reese. What do you got?
Oh, no, I found this book. I'm surprised I don't have it with me. I think it's because I had to pack Dorian stuff. But as far as college coaching, when I got this book, well, just coaching in general, because I certainly use it in the junior program. But I love the team aspect of this. I think he's got it into. He's got the physical third, the mental third, and what's the other third here? I forgot. I say I've read it 100 times. Yeah, the emotional third. Yeah, physical, mental, emotional third, and then he's got some individual team coaching. One of the things I think he's got somewhere around 27 pages here on momentum. He says a momentum motto for Bob Love's conversion theory: 3 in a row starts the flow. He talks about trying to really stop opponents from winning 3 points in a row, and how that's something to really emphasize. That's something we emphasize a lot at the college level. And I think, did we do a drill here where you said that, hey, if you
well earlier, yeah,
I think we
this
did
week while you were here, go through a young player from Tennessee playing a player from Montreal. A player from Tennessee is much stronger, and say, okay, you got to win 3 points to get a game. So if you win 6 points in a row, you're up 2-love. Mm-hmm. You're only winning points when you're serving. And it is a problem when you have incompatible players. So you could use the UTR. It could have been tennis recruiting. You have a blue chip who's playing a 4-star, and it's you could call it like say in golf a handicap system, but oh yeah, you got one serve, um, and maybe you have to serve and volley, but just go play points. No one serve, you have to serve volley. It's difficult for people to win 3 points in a row. And Chuck would, and then Jim Verdick would do the same thing: is use a graph sheet, and it is that roller coaster. People win 2 in a row, 3 in a row. When it rains, it pours, and people need to be able to clear the computer and play that next point.
Sure.
But so with Chuck, great character coach, knows the game. And a lot of times, I think back about mentioned Bobby McKinley or Steve Denton. They're just around the game so much. It's knowing without knowing. They don't have to know the tennis math. They just know.
Yeah.
They've been around tennis their whole life. They played it. Steve Denton expression, how you see the court. But coming back to the gentleman who misinterpreted what you said on the interview that we had is, like say Steve Denton, he went through our training. He hired me to go through the training, and how that happened was, it was Panam Paul, Kirsten, her son did really well at Air Force Academy this past year. She's like this tall, and she's raised her hand and said, "That's wrong. That's wrong." Because he was just, he was talking about stroke production, and he had come off the tour, and he's working at a big place in Corpus Christi.
This is Steve Denton.
Yeah, what's the name of the place in Corpus Christi?
Oh yeah, HEB Tennis Center.
Yeah. So he was in charge of that for a while, but his ego was in touch where he said, "Okay, I've got to learn," and that's a beautiful thing. I do think that more touring pros are approachable. They're especially more happy in their own skin. But
Sure.
Creasy on momentum is, again, a character coach. Just not too long ago, one of our students was his captain at the Citadel, and he he didn't make the team, or he wasn't in the lineup as a freshman, and there was things where Chuck wanted the racket face in a different position on the volley. But they could sit down. That's what the Democrats and the Republicans should be able to do in America now. It's like, hey, let's have a center. Let's come together on this. I'm an old coach who knows Vic Braden, and I know Vic Braden the man, and Mike McLaughlin, and we're talking to Jim Klein, they both have been guests on our podcast, and then Ryan Reedy's doing a lot of great things for tennis, and he's a big fan of Vic Braden's. He loves Vic Braden, but he was trained by, I trained Jim trained Ryan. I spent time with Ryan, and, it was great that he wasn't being chicken. He has this video clip that was sent to me, and I made a critique of it and was sent to Jim. And he starts off by going, the USTA, the USPTA, the PTR, the ATA. And he goes, because he's upset, and he has a great point, because everybody's saying you have time to change grips. And he shows Billie Jean King and the tape. But the thing about Braden, if you really know Vic, he had a public voice and a private voice, for the volley, grip on 3, grip on 1. When he was teaching tennis to the masses, he was on TV. He had his own television series on forehands and backhands.
Right.
And, Vic had the line, I don't care if you shoot it out of your armpit. If you get the racket face vertical to hit, if you can make the shot. But Vic would talk about the racket face. Where's the racket face at the hit? You can volley with a continental grip.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because there's a clip of, I think is it Ken Rosewall?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I sent that over to a few of my guys, and they
Rosewall hitting underspin or volleys, or
volleys, backhand volleys. And I sent it to my guys on the team. He said, "Well, wait, coach, isn't this wrong?" And I said, "No, you're not understanding. What I've told you is it's not. You can do this. You can volley. You don't have to change your grip. But what you have to do is now your hitting zone is shorter. You have to be able to time the ball much better, and it's hard when the ball's getting hit Mach 10, to do that." And so, I was saying, I was just making a point. Like, it's not that you can't do it. It's just not as efficient. How did it shake out when, with your student and Chuck? So who won the backhand volley? Was the guy able to volley the way you trained him, or?
No, I think that's where Chuck Creasy, everybody should listen to Chuck Creasy. He's a veteran, and, they got along great, and they had discussions, and no, it's not like it's an argument.
Yeah.
So it's, but coming in as a freshman, not having enough, confidence or courage to, talk to the head coach. And, I think that's,
Sure.
we recently had a young gal say to a national coach on the volley, I'm not volleying that way. Have you seen that? Have you seen Pete Sampras play that way? And I'm going, that's special.
Yeah.
Oh, that's rude. That's obnoxious. No, that's honest. Is because a lot of times a young kid, freshman in college, there's always the opposite. There's the kid that you want to, it's like the horse that you have to hold the reins and whoa, whoa, whoa. And the extrovert is too much, and sometimes the introvert's not enough. And there's so many things that come into it.
To quote Chuck on that, he says, I'd rather, he has another one of those voices that you could just listen to him talk for forever. So, how I got to know Chuck the exact same way I got to know you. I emailed you both, and you guys were both nice enough to, and probably regrettingly so now, give me your cell phone numbers, and then I just call you guys and ask you a million questions. And Chuck, what did Chuck
I walk
say?
a lot.
There you go. Well,
I'm on the phone.
yeah. So Chuck says, better to tame a roaring lion than to inspire a timid pussycat.
Yeah. No,
and so he's got so many of those. And yeah, there's a bunch. He told me, better to, you play with your head when you're ahead. You play with your heart when you're behind. That was good.
Say that again?
You play with your head when you're ahead. You play with your heart when you're behind.
Remember, you love tennis, but you got to love the microphone.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Don't lean back.
Got it. But I think Chuck Creasy and momentum. He he talks a lot about action reaction guidelines. He says, what does he say? He says, I don't want to misquote him here, but to the best of my understanding, that he divides these plays into quick pressure plays, serve and volley, or a wide and glide, and or maybe you're going to chip and charge, or you're going to do a delayed pressure play where you play for the 6th, 7th, 8th ball. You take time. You played Wardlaw directionals. He's real big into directionals. We are really big into directionals on our team. And similar to 7 concepts on Tennis Intelligence Applied, you're playing percentage, shots to the middle or cross court until the ball's hit short, and then looking to move forward. And so in a delayed pressure play, you're basically just doing that. And so he says, on your opponent's good or your opponent's bad, you would run like a quick pressure play. So if your opponent hits a winner, if he gives you a whack, you attack him right back. And that's one way of controlling momentum. And then, or if your opponent makes an unforced error, you challenge his, I should say his and hers, but he's only had men's teams. You challenge their confidence right away. And you try to run a quick pressure play and snag a quick point. You don't want to let them get into a rhythm, is what he says.
Yeah, we have to ask. I only know him via the telephone, Joel Trucker, but I know Andy Fitzgerald knows him well. And Trucker knows, for example, that Braden spent so much time around players. So is Creasy. Braden more around pro players. People don't know that. Creasy more around college players, but they're players.
Yeah.
And no one knows all things. So but the combination we have many other pillars. We have 8 when we mentioned, like a Lair with the mental part, Hopman with fitness, Jacobson with stats. But you take the combination of Braden, Van Horn, and Vandermeer.
Yeah, it's big.
Now, it's just different. It's like, okay, and Andy Fitzgerald said to me, don't say that because you're pigeonholing the GreatBase. It's not just for beginners. Actually, San Antonio, the Andy Roddick Tennis Academy, somebody I spent a lot of time with, eventually with a group of coaches bought it. So I did a little work, very little. You go twice and you go to two more times. That's not a lot of work. So you 4 weekends, and twice when the Roddicks owned it, but it wasn't like Andy Roddick's there taking notes.
Yeah.
John Roddick wasn't there. And, but with, so again, all coaches don't know all things. So, like Chuck Creasy worked with Harry Hopman, Mr. Hopman. That's not, but he doesn't have that combination. Like we had on another great coach, similar to Chuck Creasy, Greg Patton.
Right,
Great
right,
coach. I
right.
listen to him all day. He just loves it. And he's we were going to interview another coach who's basically the same age, David Getz. He's got the juice. He loves it. Been in the game forever. You got to talk to people like that. It's like in Daniel Nicole's book, the Book of Talent.
Daniel Coyle. Yeah,
Daniel
yeah,
Coyle.
yeah,
It's
Little Book of
well, no,
Talent.
but no, the first one, the Talent Code.
The
I'm sorry,
Talent
is that
Code.
the
Yeah,
correction?
yeah.
The Talent Code. And, really the people, he says the people there, I'm not saying that because I'm now almost 70, but hire the 60 and 70-year-olds.
Right. All things being
and,
equal, go with someone older.
And what we're saying is that we need to go back and, okay, 10 principles from Jim Burdick.
Right.
But I coached his family in Tampa. I was in Tampa for 15 years. And we have it on film. The kids were quite good when they were really young. And one of the parents, so no, maybe people guessing who's he talking about. One of the parents was from South Carolina and Clemson, so they go to Chuck Creasy's camp. And at that time, Tom Gilly was helping him out, and Tom Gilly had gone to Tennis Tech. And Vandermeer, we have the utmost respect for the late Vandermeer. So this woman said, "Oh, because Chuck had Tom Gilly doing the technical work." And the woman said she was going to go in a different direction than what we were doing with her children. Okay, I was the local guy. You can't be an expert if you're the local guy.
Right.
The expert is someone from out of town with a slideshow. I've been that expert many times.
Yeah.
But when you're living in Tampa for 15 years, you're not an expert. So the local yokels. So this woman said to Jilly, "Oh, you learned all your tennis from Vandermeer." She said, "No, I learned all my tennis from Steve Smith." And certainly he had such a core, such a base. I've asked him to be on. He'd be the person I'd want to have talk about Dennis Vandermeer.
Yeah.
He worked there, I don't know, 15 years. His wife, Julie, is like number 2 in the PTR.
Wow.
But he would be a great person to speak. Vandermeer, another tennis teaching genius. Another person who's been on our podcast is Alex Vukovic. He got in a little bit of trouble, just not knowing his place and just going right up to people like Dennis Kudla, who's now, we're doing some work with one of our other students, and other students, all these years later, so he's trying to get Kudla to come and see me. And I can remember one time being a driver for Kudla. Remember another time where my son, he was 2 points away from beating Kudla in a pro tournament, and the sun came down, the temperature changed. It didn't go too well for my son in the third set. But with that, Chuck Creasy, he had the utmost respect for Tom Gilly and Alex Vukovic on what they knew about tennis.
Sure.
So, that's why he's Chuck Creasy, is a lifelong learner. The passion never stops.
Yeah, I think he was, when I spoke with him a few days ago, he was quoting Clarence Mabry.
Clarence Mabry, the John Newcomb family tennis book. That's where red, yellow, green comes from in our system.
Nice. Well, yeah, he said, I'm going to misquote it, but it was something about, the number one thing to be a great player or something is like the power of an inquisitive mind or something like that. I'm misquoting it slightly, but you get the idea.
I'll tell you a Clarence Mabry story. I was fortunate enough to be around him a little bit, and he was hosting this tennis teachers conference, the tennis teachers conference in New York. And where I was sitting, he was setting his clipboard down, and then he'd go up and interview, or he would introduce the next speaker. And the speaker would come up, and he's so gracious, and he was so funny. But I was sitting right there, and he was writing a letter like, "Dear Mom." And it looked like he was just taking notes the whole time. And I remember Nick going, he goes, "I'm so honored to have Clarence Mabry taking notes." But I just knew on the clipboard, he's like, "Dear Mom, how are you doing?" You can't make that stuff up.
That's funny.
With one thing about Creasy's book is on the first one, I need to come back and ask him. I'm 99% sure that's Mark Dixon. And Dixon He's amazing. He did an internship. It was very brief, but I actually had Dixon give my son some lessons. And what he did, because Creasy, just run, is he said, I got to be in the pool. So every time the team would run, he would be in the swimming pool. Um, and um, but I remember Mark Dixon's father. He loved to hit the backboard. That was part of it. But he came out and just talk about passion, and he's very successful in business. He just came out and watched practice. I mean, like 3 times a week. He just
Yeah.
Mark Dixon's father. He comes out to hit the backboard and just watches little kids learn how to play tennis.
Oh, I
So
think
so it's like, where does the passion come from? That's an amazing story.
yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's huge to just if I could go right now and watch Chuck Creasy run a college practice, like if it didn't interfere with my seat, I would easily. I mean, that's a vacation for me. I mean, I'd rather do that than go, same thing being here too. I mean, it's it's really interesting. I am as passive as I can possibly be here. The ego in me wants to get out and just like just teach the whole day, and do all that. I mean, I say that sometimes it's nice to have a break, but just to be a fly on the wall and not try to go make a correction myself and just see exactly, okay, well, what are you going to say? What are you going to, and so just to sit back and observe. I think the downside of that is I just don't want to appear lazy. I'm happy to help in any way, but I certainly enjoy just sitting back and just watching you coach and seeing kind of what you place value in, right? And taking notes and things like that. And it's very interesting to watch you coach. Um, Someone like my son and then someone like Josh, in the same practice, and then everyone in between. I mean, I think
18-year-old. Well, we got to get your son on a podcast. There used to be this show, Art Linkletter, and the kids say the darndest things. And your son, I mean, he needs to be in the movies. That kid.
Oh man, well, so yeah, very very brief highlight of the weekend or of the week, I guess, was when you were, he found out that he had a palm up serve, or full
Yeah,
blown palm up
we have
serve.
to show the film of him to our listeners, where I got him on a bench,
Yeah,
and if he doesn't do it on balance, he falls off the bench.
yeah,
It's pretty
yeah. You
impressive.
told him, you said, make sure you don't hurt the court when
Yeah,
when you fall
and then
off.
also too, jump down, jump up, work on your legs.
No, that was huge. It was huge, and he told him, Dorian, you have a what? And PA, and he's like, potential.
Yeah. No, he's always got the comeback. Here's something from Chuck Creasy. Like, well, where does this come from? Mark Dixon, quickly, amazing story, is he beats Vilas. And Vilas won in the world. I mean, Borg, I mean, he played world team tennis. He'd get into all this, but he was an amazing clay court player. Amazing player. And I understand that Vilas's health is not very good. So all the best to Guillermo Vilas. We're having a lot of fun at one point in America saying Guillermo Vilas, Guillermo Vilas. So then he goes, my name is Guillermo. Bud Collins is the one going Guillermo. But he was really good on clay. So Mark Dixon plays him. He beats him 4-4. And when Dixon, when he was playing against him so when Dixon was returning, he didn't attack. He just stayed back and rallied. And he only attacked one game each set. And that's when he broke him. He wasn't going to try to break him every game.
Oh,
he
smart.
goes, I'm going to get into the match after I'm really grooved, staying back, hitting ground strokes with him. I'm only going to attack one game.
Oh, that's smart.
And, it's like, that's when you sit around and you talk to, like a mastermind or these people who've been around forever. Like, where does that come from? Like for myself, I had to stop playing tennis because I was at Tyler Junior College and we were second-class citizens. When I was there, I was good enough to be to beat guys in the top 6.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Scotty Perelman. He was at Kansas and he won the Big 8. And there was a player from Tyler Junior College who was in his lineup. I remember just calling him. I go, Pearl, I can still play on your team. But I stopped playing because I was practicing 4 hours a day. And it's like, you can't be wrapped up in your own game. But I played a lot of tennis with a guy from England, lefty, better athlete than me, bigger, stronger, faster. And I never one time played him in practice. I knew we were playing every tournament together. I knew I was going to play him. And I didn't play the pattern against his weakness until I finally played him in a tournament. And afterwards, he was just swearing at me.
So what was the pattern?
USOB. I just needed to have him hit to my two-handed backhand. He was a lefty, and I in practice it's not complicated. I just played in practice. I never played to his weakness.
I thought you were gonna say that you were running around your backhand in the defensive area of the red zone, slapping inside out winners. That's what I thought you were gonna say.
No, I wasn't playing. In practice, I wasn't playing that dumb against him. But no, it's great to talk to you about tennis. Let's go a few more questions, and we'll wrap it up here.
Well, okay, yeah, sounds good. I think we'll do one more about Creasy. So I think I have to be careful, because I can definitely come off as kind of I don't know, maybe the word is annoying, but with these coaches, because
your son did it.
yeah, exactly. You see where he gets it, right?
Oh no, but he wasn't. I did call a yapper over here.
Yes.
He's not an E. He's a capital E.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that was funny. You said.
Couldn't believe it. I woke him up a few times up on that third floor. I thought I'd knock on the door and he would be like this, just talking in his sleep.
Yeah, and he probably does. In fact, I know he does some. But no, you told me I brought a yapper and a snapper.
Yeah.
It's very true.
Joshua was foreign. We have a pre-post.
Yeah, no, it's better.
The operation was a success, but the patient may die.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll try to stay on him.
Is he going to go to work?
But with Chuck, what I have to be careful with, with these coaches is, I'm, and it's not trying to be right. It's really trying to kind of get right, try to understand, okay, what's kind of the truth in this, and, trying to find, okay, this coach says this and this coach says this. What are the similarities? Certainly, a similarity would be that you and Rick Macy might both teach Eastern forehand grips to beginners, but somewhere where you may differ is turning a doorknob, And so, as I'm reading through this book, I'm reading through these momentum guidelines, and it's quite extensive. But he talks about, if you're ahead by 3 points or something like that, you want to play a very conservative, like it doesn't help you to run a quick pressure play or attack or be, basically a green light point where you're going to take more risk and having, kind of spent a handful of time with I say, GreatBase content, which, that comes from Carlos Goffey. And I think the book was Tournament Tough, which
great book. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I bought and actually really enjoyed that book as well. But, I don't know if it was the first conversation, but very quickly, I kind of like to get into with the coaches. Well, you think this and he thinks this, what do you think? Tell me why you disagree. And Chuck actually references Goffey in this book as well.
One thing that came out with speaking to Carlos, he was on our podcast, and actually of all of them, I think we need to call him back up and say, let's do another one because the sound wasn't so good. But with one thing that really helped me out for a decade is a book like Tournament Tough.
Great book.
I was assigned it. We had a course called Contemporary Literature and Tennis Instruction. 16 weeks in a semester, kids had to read 8 books. 4 of them I assigned. So they'd come in and, and I was, reading book reports, and just that's reinforcement. But go ahead.
Well, no. So I waited about I don't know, maybe the second or third phone call. And then I kind of said, okay, well, give me this, Goffey says this. I know you're a fan of Goffey and you say this, like, give me your rationale. And, we started talking back and forth and about it and stuff like that. But I have to be careful because sometimes I try to kind of poke too much at when I ask these questions, why this, but, and I still kind of reread these momentum guidelines, and I don't, they're helpful. I think we use the directionals probably, which I know comes from Wardlaw, but we use the directionals a lot in our practices, and definitely just, kind of if you make a bad error, regrouping with your fundamentals, which I'm sure isn't, not unique to to Chuck. I mean, Jim Lair talks about the 16-second cure, and Chuck talks in here about sometimes being aggressive can just mean a state of mind, just buckling down and just playing tough. But
Let me say this. So we're
yeah,
excited. We're going to have Paul Wardlaw on as a guest. Made great contribution to tennis with directionals. It's like Dennis Vandermeer with progressions. If you go back to Elaine Mason in the 50s, it was amazing what she was doing. You think about kids cutting off the handles of ping pong paddles. The Czechs were doing that. And then you have a ping pong paddle on both sides and just teaching kids to go out
I love it.
and play mini tennis. And can't hit the ball hard, and you're just your kids aren't going like this, whacking. And now it's just gone away. It was much better off when a kid had to cut off a wooden racket. Things can just be too fancy. Too much money can be spent. I think a lot of times people throw money at a problem, and we all beat up on the USTA. That's one of the problems they have is they have too much money.
Yeah.
But like the Lendl grid,
Love the Lindell grid.
I put some words to that, but that really comes from Stacia Fonseca's father, Raul. He was a minister. He passed away at an early age, but he really coached his daughter. But we said, okay, you can come out to practice anytime you want, and he studied Lendl. So this came out, I think, one of our podcasts. Dave Secker, who coaches this young girl who's cracked the top 100 in the world. She played 1 year. First name is Diana Schneider. I think I'm mispronouncing it, but they're in the Australian Open and they're in the cafeteria. And Secker tells his player, that's Lendl. And the girl thinks, oh, he knows the Lendl grid. No, Lendl doesn't know the Lendl grid. I mean, people in Lendl, I've been in a couple meetings where I didn't have a speaking part, just a couple, because the USTA invites national coaches and,
Sure.
or not national, but junior development coaches into the US Open. But, people could dig out Bill Talbert's book. You could talk about the camp we were at in Cincinnati, but Cincinnati's had Barry McKay, Bill Talbert, and Tony Trabert. 3 players in the top 10. So there was people long years and years ago. If people go back to Jack Kramer, and you think about, we say, well, Carlos Coffey, he did a great job, and he connected with Bill Jacobson. But going back to Jack Kramer's high school geometry teacher. It's so important to win the first point. And then, if you play the odds, like a poker player is going to figure it out. If you're up 40 love, I mean, come on, you should serve and volley, take a risk. The math's on your side.
Mm-hmm.
But people just want to win so badly. And that's not rocket science. But it's just amazing. I really get in trouble by saying, I think really, and all the way, there's no difference to me. And I've been there around the Pro Tour where it's a brain drain. You listen to the commentators on TV. I love listening to them, but it's really small talk. It's not fact-finding information. And so that's where, what we need to do is we need to dig and hang in there. Read books and listen. And
so what, and I'd be interested if, to my understanding, what Chuck says about being very aggressive when you're up there, when you're up 40 love or something like that, is that you give your opponents an opportunity. That he says players' hands work better when they're down. That's what he says. Players' hands work better. And so you give your opponent an opportunity to make a great play. So if you're up 40 love or something like that, and they pass you or something like that, their hands are going to work better. They're going to be more intense because they don't want to lose the game. And so
that's a hunch.
Yeah.
That's a hunch.
Sure.
That's not a fact. That's a hunch.
Sure.
But he's been around the game forever, and if you're, I'm trying to think of the coach McDonald. He was at Vanderbilt for a long time. He coached one of our players, and he went back to the Korean War when there was a foxhole.
Mm-hmm.
When there's a sniper in a foxhole, what do the Marines do? He asked one of my players, and it was Jeff McDonald. It was very flattering to me. He goes, well, if you've been hanging out here, you know more about nuts and bolts and X's and O's. And it's like a lot of these tennis coaches in college look at kids to read The Art of War.
Yeah.
So he asked this girl, Liberty Svecki, she's she had injuries, but she was at Bollettieri's. She went in without a technical base, and then, long story short, she spent it was maybe 6 years every day. She became, she was 2 in the U.S. She went to Vanderbilt. She was a good tennis player, and that's what he asked her. And I'm sitting back there going, oh, and the Marines, because she was, like coming in on everything and being maybe too aggressive, and that was his hunch, and he said the Marines, they get on their belly and they just wait.
Mm-hmm.
They just wait because the guy in the foxhole is going to get hungry. And it's like, that's some patience.
Yeah.
That's some patience. Is that okay? That's where they are. They're in foxholes, and we've got some food up here, and we're just, we can't go anywhere, but we can wait on our bellies, so they can't shoot at us for days.
Yeah.
For days. So, and I do think most people would agree that when we use the term warrior, tennis is tennis. It's not war. I couldn't even fathom what that's all about.
Sure. Last few questions here. But no, I can always talk about Chuck. That's a fun conversation. But a couple that I had written down. And of course, I have my own ideas about these, but I like to hear yours. In Tennis Intelligence Applied, you reference that there's, you have 7 concepts of single strategy, but you say really there's 77 concepts of single strategy. Strategy isn't black and white.
Well, I could be misinterpreted like you were in that conversation. We could try to say, okay, we've invented something here, we've revolutionized something here, and listen to ourselves talk. We're listening to ourselves talk on these crazy podcasts, but no, we keep it 7. We make it emotional anchors. I know like Tylee, when he became the director of player development, he had 10 concepts. 7 of them were the ones that you're looking at, but he had serve and return, and then he had combination.
Well, so that was what I was gonna say. Can you, if you say there should be 77.
Well, there could be. I say that in jest, meaning that, I'm going to try to wow you with some,
right,
this and that and the other thing, and yap. And you want to keep it simple, but no, you definitely could add serve and return like Tylee did.
Well, that was what I was going to ask you. Would you add 2 more?
You could add combinations for sure. But what we tell people with the 7 concepts, when the point's over,
where are you?
No, when the point's over, one of the 7 concepts most likely was violated.
Yeah.
Then it's just basic. But also too is that we start off by giving people a test, tiebreaker test, and then we could get into where'd they come from. I was working for All American Sports. I started a little bit after Chuck Creasy, and I was like, just like everybody else, like an auctioneer. Forehand cross court, backhand cross court, now an approach shot, now a volley, now an overhead, volley, and overhead.
Yep.
And this program I had, and I don't think has really been, replicated, Tennis Tech, we would take 1 week and run that drill.
I love it.
We would use layer concepts on what to do, even like, how you waited in line, layer 1, looking straight ahead, moving your feet, how you hang on the racket, your right hand, if you're righty, down to the side. And, it's like, okay. And the great base comes from that period in time that in Texas, those pillars were helping us with a great base. Peter Burwash was the first person to reach out, the late Peter Burwash.
Mm-hmm.
And, people will badmouth Peter, but, shut up. I mean, come on. You have to know the guy. And, what he did was outstanding. And it's too bad that's something else that's going to, I think, be lost. But, so yeah, you could have more than 7.
Well, yeah,
I think Tylee did a good job saying, okay, there's 10.
That was what I was specifically what I was going to ask you is if you had to add 3 more, what would they be? And I
think serve, return.
Yep. With combinations.
I think you probably could go miscellaneous because
yeah,
there's patterns that most kids have no patterns.
Well, and that
0. I mean, they just you chart kids at a really young age. They're not hitting the aces. So they're going to double fault. They're going to miss a forehander back return. They're going to miss a forehander back in ground stroke, and that's it.
Yeah,
And the
right.
parents are on the sidelines like something's going on. Nothing's going on. It's like, like, let's teach these kids how to play.
Well, it's funny the things that I'm having to teach on the college side, because one of the first things I'll tell you what I'll do with the women this year is I'll just teach them bring-ins. That's we'll do bring-ins all day long, because so many of the matches we lose, especially at the 4, 5, 6 spot, are just players who can keep the ball in play, and not to stereotype, but these women who cannot volley at all. And last year, it was like, look, you just need to hit just a low slice, bring them in. You don't even have to do a drop shot. Doesn't even have to be good.
And then when they come, just hit it right at
Just
them.
hit them at them. That is
No, for sure.
I mean, that's like, that will probably be practice one. It's like, let's see who can hit the ball the shortest and bring the player in. Just keep it low. I mean,
take the role of the spoiler.
And so,
you have all these kids that, they got the big duffel bag, and, they got too many rackets, and they got an entourage, and all they do is hit topspin lobs.
Right.
You're playing a kid. They haven't hit it overhead in the last 3 years.
Right. We talk about that all the time.
Just let them take gas. That'd be a Bradenism that comes from Kramer. Just let them take gas. There's very little tennis played in tennis.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll do that, and then we'll do the opposite of that. We'll say, okay, look, because if you're playing these girls that just hit kind of this high, heavy ball, and not even heavy, but just a high ball, like, can you come take the ball out of the air, with just a conventional volley, and can you hit an overhead? If you could hit an overhead, you would not be so afraid of coming in, or if you could volley. But
here's a story. I don't want to mention a name, but my son Connor, he could do a few things with the ball, and there was a young kid. He went on and played in the ACC. He was top 5 in the United States, and they just grew up together. And my son did that all the time against him. He would just bring him in and bang the ball at him. The kid couldn't volley, but he was a warrior. I shouldn't use that term. It's not war, but he was a great competitor from the baseline. He couldn't volley, and then you bring him in, and then the kid would go crazy. He'd be yelling and screaming. And I used to just say to my son, "Why do you beat him that way? Just go take the short ball, come in,
right,
volley, play like a pro." But when you get up to a really high level,
yeah, of course, yeah, it's
but that could be changes because, but it's like Wayne Ferreira. He's got TFO volleying better. The public needed to go TFO. Papa Smith. I was around for 2 weeks because I was just traveling with my son for 2 weeks. I mean, he only reason he knows Papa Smith is he knew I was with Connor. But he says hello to everybody. No stage fright. He's got a lot of calculation in his volley,
sure,
especially the backhand side. But I mean, no stage fright, going in, being aggressive, and so when we talk about making changes in your game, we're not saying, okay, Francis, you're doing everything wrong. I mean,
right.
I mean, for me, when he won the Orange Bowl at 15, and I know, like, say, Ray Benton, I mean, he was really like, he's going to meet the president, and I don't know how many emails everybody in tennis got on the success of this young 15-year-old. So there's a positive in that. But they, what's it called, the Junior Champion Tennis Center in Maryland, the Washington D.C. area, and I haven't been there. I've been told they do a great job with character and this and that. They had Vic as a consultant, and Vic, last time he was there, I just know he wasn't too happy that they just had him talk to the parents of the little kids, and so he was typecast. And when it comes down to it, in a perfect world, if Francis Tiafoe, who, his father's a custodian, he's there, he hits all these balls, and they do a lot of things so well there. If, and I would love to see him win a major, but he could possibly win multiple number of majors. If, but no, we're not saying, okay, he needs to come back. It's like the Coco Gauff on the forehand.
Right.
And, I remember with Matt Clore, we'd be at a tournament where he had his players when he was a USTA national coach, not my players, and say, let's go watch Coco Gauff play. And we were saying back then, because I remember one year she played the 18s and she played the 12s. And, she was competitive in both. That was very smart. That was very smart. I was with Andy one time where her little brother was playing a set with a teaching pro.
Mm-hmm.
And, to me with Coco, while the horse is out of the barn, you could work with her. And, can somebody take it apart, put it together, and the people talking to her? Mike Custer, he listens to a podcast. He's a lifer in tennis. I've known him a long time. We studied tennis together, and he's heard me say, which Brad Gilbert goes, one time he goes, I don't do grips.
Yeah.
And now he's with Coco Gauff. And it goes around and around. What do you got?
Last question here.
Let me ask in the back here. How are we doing for time? We're okay for time.
Good.
I made the mistake of not knowing what time we started.
I can keep going, but if we need to,
let me just ask this. We have never done this before, but we're rookies. I'm the head rookie. With how long we've been chatting here? 2:06.
One more question.
Go a little longer because we have broke the 3-hour barrier.
Oh, that's great.
I think we have two categories. We have one, we got people who don't listen to us. And we have two, we got people who like the length of these. So there's a few crazies like you and me out there.
No, I love it. I can keep going.
Let's just go for a couple more. We're done.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. So, it's we've kind of already kind of answered this in a roundabout way. Maybe we can keep going. You mentioned in another, you have to dig deep for this. But you've mentioned, well, you can attack without coming to the net. And so what patterns, most of what, and this goes all the way back to where you say, like, look, we teach more than just basics. We teach emergency toss, we teach the tweener, we teach, whatever, but most people don't know basics. So we stick to those for a while, and that's kind of, I would assume the same.
Oh, I get so many parents they've made the mistake. They didn't stay the course.
Yeah.
You got to stay the course.
Right.
You got to keep coming around.
No, you've taught the overhead backhand flick, which is, something we do for fun and kind of like, that's what I call it. I don't know what you call it.
One thing in today's tennis about, like, the drop shot is an offensive weapon.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Charlie, people are playing so far behind the baseline.
Right.
Figure it out. But you would not convince me otherwise. Stay in closer to the baseline.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like Gilbert, and I love Gilbert. Love to listen to Gilbert. Gilbert he was going crazy with Andy Murray hitting too many drop shots. Mm-hmm. And years later, they were working together, but they're on TV, and Gilbert is interviewing him. And Gilbert said, I love how you're, doing with the drop shot. And Andy goes, I thought you hated the drop shot. You got to remember that Andy was such a young guy.
Right.
And then Gilbert said, because Gilbert's one of those guys, knowing without knowing, is he going to do well on a tennis math test? I don't think so. But all you got to do is turn the TV on. But I'd love to listen to Gilbert. He knows a lot about tennis. Is Gilbert, are you going to send Gilbert, 8-year-olds?
Right.
Yeah, that's just not his cup of tea. I think that he would do great because of his personality, but if you haven't done it, you haven't done it. So if you could push someone way out of the court, for a kid to hit a high arcing shot, Bud Collins called it the moon ball.
Yeah.
From Harold Solomon way back when. So you push their opponent back. The trajectory makes the ball bounce high. Now they're playing the ball above their shoulder. And, even though they have a big forehand, they don't play an approach volley.
Right.
So you push them back deep in their forehand corner, and you don't call the drop shot a drop shot. You call it an imitation shot. And then what you're really doing is you're bringing the fish out of the water. But I know now when you talk to kids, you have to explain what you mean by a fish out of water, because kids don't go fishing anymore. I don't think kids are putting the worm on the hook. And all you got to do is see a fish out of water. They don't like being out of water. So when a kid's up at the net, that's where I love what you're doing. Bring them in. I have done that. Coached in the junior college. It's okay. It's crunch time. We worked. And you take the role of the spoiler with, not so much anymore, but I always tell people I'm good at three things. It was Lincoln Logs, which is kind of like The leg
I
goes,
know what
leg
Lincoln
goes from,
logs are.
leg goes
Yeah.
from the 60. And I was very good at street hockey and feeding balls. But a lot of people never see me feed balls because I'm with a lot of people who can't hit balls. And but if I with people who can hit balls, I can feed balls. And we do this want to workout class, and we were doing that long before cardio tennis. I one time was doing a clinic. Michelle Krause,
Okay.
is that her name? Nice lady. She's done so much for me. And she said, "Well, Steve, you guys are always working with advanced players. We feed the ball very fast, and I don't know if you guys will be the best feeders. So this is how to do it." And I said, "Well, yeah, okay, but we feed a certain way that I think it'll be pretty quick. And you just grab 3 balls and like a drummer, and you just go like a boom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom, boom." There used to be this Japanese ball machine called the Mihai, and it was like I can feed faster than that thing. And Braden used to have these tables. You didn't have a ball basket when we worked for Braden. It was right at chest level. One, protect the coach. 2, he want you to look straight ahead when you're feeding. He didn't want you to put your head down and feed the ball like this. You looked right at your player the whole time. You could just feather it in like this, and it would bounce really low and bounce like 6 inches off the ground. The guy's a genius. But do people really know Vic that way? No, they don't know Vic that way. So then you could just gun it. Boom, 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 boom. There's a young coach here, a great guy, Ethan Matthews. He worked for Tom Fye, the late Tom Fye. And I just go, scamper, scamper, scamper. He just started laughing because Fye, he passed away at 68. When he would feed balls, and he loved the running class. He that was not his thing to slow people down and go, okay, I'm going to make you miserable, or we're going to work on technique. I don't have a problem making people miserable. So you just grab 3 balls and go boom, 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 and you can pump balls out in a hurry. But people aren't going to see me do that because we got your man Joshua over here listening. That's if he were to come back, and if he went home and he went to work, yeah, we could pump out some balls to him. Like the young kid from Montreal, he hits the ball well enough now that we could feed to him.
Right. Well, and you tried that with Josh initially. It was kind of like, well, let's test this out. And it's not that he failed or anything, but it's like, okay, let's go back and let's.
Well, if you're feeding rapid fire,
right,
and the kid's backhand volley is hitting the court, the second ball is going to zoom by.
Right.
Like Rosewall. I mean, here's a guy who got in the Wimbledon final at 54, at 74, 20 years later. We tell all the time, Steve Denton, I asked him to say it on his podcast. And I think reinforcement, people need to hear these stories. Well, I've already heard that. And one of our young coaches, he just got the job at the University of Idaho. And he's going on to other things. I go, you're blowing it. These podcasts are not about me.
Yeah.
So, I go, no, you have to keep listening to these podcasts. So Steve Denton's playing with Curran. Curran was in the Wimbledon final, lost to Becker, great player. And Denton tells the story. He's got a sitter, and he cuts in diagonally perfectly, and he just guns the poach right at Rosewall's body, right at his chest. He comes back and bounces off Denton's chest, and Rosewall just looks at him and smiles. The speed of the game changes. I'm a hockey guy, so I remember doing this with Chad Berryhill. I spent a lot of time in Michigan. He's from Michigan. I said, watch this, Berryhill. We watch college hockey on one station, and then you change the channel to pro hockey. It is such a different speed.
Sure.
It's like, it looks like the college players who are great. It looks like they're skating in mud. And, so.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I remember from our first interview, I'm going to actually say I was the original podcast because that was before the podcast, and we videoed me asking you a bunch of questions. And I don't know if you did that before then. So I'm going to take all the credit.
I would say this. I would say this is that, how old are you?
I am 40 now, but thanks for bringing that up.
40. You're a young guy. What year were you born?
83.
1983. Yeah. So I've been teaching tennis a long time. I'm losing my voice. Maybe that's a good sign to shut up. No, I don't think you're the first person to interview me.
Yeah. But anyway, when I was telling Yvonne, I think, and I don't want to tell me if I'm misquoting you, but in some way, shape, or form, I asked you, and you're always saying, "What's the number one correction I make?" And I feel like you say that on 2 occasions actually. Yeah, but you say 1, you don't get the racket head below the ball.
That's Braden.
Oh,
Braden said it for a long time. That was the number one mistake. Then at the end of his career, because he had spent so much time studying the brain, he said the number one thing is let the other person know they're going to lose. You got to Lair walking with confidence. You had me read an article. I read it, and that just wasn't Vic. Where someone was saying Vic said this and Vic said that. That just wasn't Vic.
yeah.
This is about the article, and the article had nothing to do with. We had a podcast on it, King Richard, and that they threw Vic under the bus. That was not Vic.
Right.
Would not have said that.
Well, so that was one. That was Vic. Okay, that was Vic. And then the other one you say, which you said a lot this weekend, is the number one problem is players try to hit the ball too hard. Right? They try to hit the ball too hard. Well, I was telling Yvonne.
I think you could always say one of the biggest mistakes, but sure. I mean, people, you go up and you pull the racket. our gentleman over here in the corner.
Yeah.
And I pull it. He's hanging on the racket. I pull the racket, and I grew up on a lake. I feel like the motorboat, and he's a water skier.
Sure.
I mean, I pull the racket. He's coming with me. I go,
Yeah.
come on. I mean, no one's going to steal your racket, especially up here in the winter green.
Well, what I was telling Yvonne, and tell me if I am getting you wrong here, but I feel like in the very first interview you ever did with me on
first interview in tennis.
Yeah, first interview you ever had in tennis.
I need to interrupt on that. Let me say this. I was one time being interviewed in Germany, and we got to get Mark Hamlin, and I speak a little more German than a parrot. And Hamlin was translating for me. And if it's tennis and it's German, now I've been around Germany so much. Braden used to have these tennis schools where I would go over and work as a consultant or whatever. And Vexel die Griff. And the audience really loved it because I looked at the translator and said, I didn't say anything about changing the grip. So, there's always something lost in the translation too. But
so you said, I feel like in this interview, you said, I asked you, what are these, I don't remember the exact phrasing, but just at a high level, what is, I don't want to say it was the most important thing, but it was something along the lines of, and you basically just said speed. Speed is the, kind of the difference maker. Does that ring a bell or something like that?
Well, I think as a communicator, this young coach from Utah is a great communicator. It's just a natural. But sometimes when a player comes in, you think, because there's emotion in coaching, and if you're working with somebody and they're not a great mover, but for years, we would say that about women's tennis is that speed. But now with the rackets having changed.
Ball speed. Yeah.
Foot speed.
No. But
are you,
I'm talking about ball speed.
No, I think the number one thing, I mean, granted with a serve and okay, the placement was a Federer serve better than a Roddick serve. It wasn't as fast, but did he hit spots better? So there's just, it's not like, okay, here are the answers, but
sure.
But speed of foot.
Yeah.
Speed of foot. I
mean,
that's a problem with, we try to do that here where we always say, okay, like say hit off a cone. Baseball players will do it. They call it a swing coach. For 15 years in our backyard, I mean, baseballs would come over the tennis fence. We taught right next to where the Yankees played spring baseball. And that's just part of the culture. But you put a kid on a cone, we always say, put a skip rope behind it. Make them really like oxygen. Okay, do 40 jumps. 40 double jumps would be better. And then hit 4 off the cone. But now, again, I don't want to come across as being negative. A lot of kids, 1, they don't have a skip rope in their bag. 2, they have a skip rope in their bag. But 3, they don't use a skip rope in their bag. 4, they can't skip rope.
Yep. No, I think all of true.
And that's the American kid. I don't want to throw every American junior on the bus, but
all right. Well, for real, last question now.
I don't know if we answered any of your questions.
No.
Our listeners should know it's we're heading towards midnight here. We have some spirit.
No, I mean, I
don't even know if I'm making any sense.
No, it's all good. This is all good. The beauty of these podcasts is I can re-listen to them if I have additional questions. But okay, so this is kind of a generic one. I'll put you on the spot though. All right, 5 people at your dinner party. But they got to be alive because I feel like I already know who your dinner party would be. But they're all. Can you answer that one?
David Squire one time sent me. He's an Australian. I always tell him, no, you've lived in Germany so long now, Squire. You're German. And Andy Fitzgerald coaches Kimberly Burrell, And this was an honor to me. I haven't never met her father, but I was sent this thing by Squire because Squire and Kimberly Burrell's father are very good. They're very good friends. They grew up together, and it was the same question. It was the same question, But he mentioned my name. 3 or 4 people at the dinner table.
Nice.
So you want 5? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I'll let you adjust I'll let you adjust the question. You could keep it tennis, or you could just say 5 people.
And they have to be tennis people?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'll let you answer. If you don't want it to be tennis people, it doesn't have to be. But I think it would be. What I don't know. Let's get a nod from Yvonne. Should it be tennis people, or should it be anybody?
Can I take a nap before I answer that?
It's hard. It's hard.
No.
You can come back to it.
With I get emotional and say, hey, get my mother to the table.
Yeah.
I mean, so that
yeah.
I think would be an emotional answer. The old man too.
Yeah.
No, it comes down to I wouldn't mind talking to Don Rickles. You even know who he is?
No.
Yeah, I got to look him up. Don Rickles.
Okay.
I like Don Rickles. Rodney Dangerfield, you know who he is?
Yeah,
so
I do.
You go humor. I mean, you could go,
let's say
let's go Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah. So we can get
Winston Churchill.
But but the preface, alive. They got to be alive. They got to be current. Yeah.
You said that.
Yeah. They got to be, because then you go into, I mean, you just get into like, okay, all the people. I mean, come on. It's like, are we at the Last Supper?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
No. But no, that's a great question too. And
I would say this, and with a great base, I want to learn from everybody, but who are leaders in American tennis?
Yeah. So let's do tennis and let's do alive, which I think is great because most of your,
I think some of it we've already, to me, I would say, okay, but let's record the dinner.
Yeah, great. So who you have?
Well, people are on podcasts. Okay, Andy Fitzel, we'll get him at the table.
Okay, so you got Andy. That's very nice. For as much time as you and Andy, and I think Andy's I think you and Andy were awesome on the podcast together. So we got Andy. Andy's one.
Well, you get say Warren Pretorius. I mean, I asked Bill Jacobson. He
Computent, is that?
Yeah, he's an older man.
Computentist, right?
And maybe that's because he knew our podcast. He said he listens to the podcast, but maybe because he goes, I don't think I could do 3 hours.
I'm writing these down. So we got Andy Fitzel.
No, I mean, there's only a few of the pillars. Bill Jacobson, that guy. I mean, he knows so much about tennis. Warren Pretorius, he's in the same line of work. So I would say this though, is Ken Dryden's a hockey player. Bright guy, went to Cornell. I mean, he was a super hockey player. And I've read a couple of his books. And I do think when people talk about the greatest of all time or talk about their sport, people go back to the time when they're most enthusiastic about the sport.
Mm-hmm.
And with for me, I think I've been around Connors and listened to Connors so much. I mean, of course, again, she's not alive, but I remember not reading this until Gloria Connors passed away. I read where when Jimmy was really pumped up, she said, "We got to go. We got to go." But what the thing was is that she was just coaching Jimmy.
Yeah.
And I know you and I couldn't do that. You couldn't do that with Dorian. So yeah, okay, Dorian, you're really pumped up. You're doing things right now. We got to go.
Yeah.
Because you got to stay there and
exactly.
You're running 2 teams. You're teaching juniors and
yeah.
But if it was if the goal was to try to make tennis better,
sounds like a great dinner. I think yes. Let's make that
okay. The people at the USTA is that. That's one of the great things about the technical tapes we make is the parents take the tape and go home and the coach isn't in the room. There's no rebuttal, just, are you going to listen to it? Say, watch it 3 times.
Yeah.
And I'd say the leaders, and it's, you said the USTA, I don't mean the people that are there now. In 1987, the USTA got into player development. All the people that have come and gone, what did the leaders of the player development do? With, like say Wayne Bryan. I think Wayne Bryan, in so many ways, he's so positive, but bring his letter back. Wayne Bryan's still alive.
We got Wayne
bring
Bryant.
that letter he wrote that he didn't mean for anybody to read.
Yeah.
And people forgot about that letter. And you could put down Patrick McEnroe. I wrote a thing about Patrick McEnroe. We got 5 yet?
Wait, you got, so unless I missed one, you got Andy Fitzell, Bill Jacobson, Wayne Bryan, Patrick McEnroe.
The one thing about
So we got
Patrick
4.
is that he was a general manager of player development one time.
Yeah.
And what an amazing background. Now he has a job with the International Tennis Hall of Fame. And I wrote a spoof. He had 3 jobs at one point. He was coaching Davis Cup. He was doing ESPN. And he was Davis Cup captain. Help me out with the 3 here. I'm winding it down here. I've already said it, but it would make any sense. He was in charge of Davis Cup.
Yeah.
Head coach or the captain. He was general manager of player development.
Yeah.
He's on ESPN.
Wow.
And it's like, I do think it's like, this is what the past was. But I also think with Patrick, okay, what happened? What happened? And then now,
Yeah.
but the USTA is, did they come? Were they going, well, for the last 5 years, say it was 5 years, in the last umpteen millions of dollars, we shouldn't have done it that way. We should do it this way. But in politics, you can't do that.
Yeah.
This was wrong, and we should have done that. I have a jacket hanging up that I was given by Mike McLaughlin, and it's I would never wear it. It was from Vic. It was in Vic Brady's library.
Okay.
And Vic, he thought it was a great thing when the USTA had it was sports science. And at one point he was on the committee, at one point he wasn't on the committee. And Vic Brady is such a positive guy. At one time, Vic, he didn't have a leadership role and he really didn't have a speaking part, but he was at the table. And what he said, such a positive guy. People, he would never say the Vic Brady that the world knew, but he said, now I know what life is like in hell. Because, it was just going around in circles. And, I'll say that Robert Lansdorp.
He'd be your 5th?
Robert Lansdorp would be great. But I also think it was like, let's stay away from the forehand and who invented this and who invented that. But with Lansdorp, one time at the National Teachers Conference, fortunately I wasn't there, but I got a manuscript of it. I got what everybody said is it was Braden, it was Burwash, Bollettieri, Lansdorp, I believe it was Vandermeer. And I have to go back, speculate or fact checker, maybe Mr. Hoffman. No, he went that way. He was there for sure. So Vic, he starts talking about brain typing. And it was about what we can do for American junior tennis. And Lansdorp, when people, we don't talk too much about Bill Cosby anymore, but Bill used to, your father doesn't want to swear. I'm sure with Dorian once in a while, you'd go, yeah, and you hold it back.
Sometimes.
And you hold it back. So Lansdorp got up and he didn't swear, but he just said, for Christ's sakes. And he goes, the USTA, they're bringing kids in, they're 15 years old, and they're hanging on the racket like it's a frying pan. And that's what should happen.
Yeah.
That's what should happen.
Absolutely.
Like in Japanese society, there's too much harmony. And, the tennis in the hockey world, I've enjoyed Yvonne, being around him so much. And, he's with me several months and I don't watch any hockey. But then the playoffs start.
Yeah.
And I'm watching it every night. And he's listening to these commentators. And he goes, these guys are better. These guys should be commentating about tennis.
Right.
Why? Is they're chirping. They're being a little negative. They're taking some jabs. And they're not edifying. But our commentators on TV, for the most part, my opinion is they're edifying the players because they're looking for jobs.
Absolutely.
And look how many commentators, they have access to these players. And next thing you know, it's a coaching gig. And are you kidding me? It's like, and with Macy, again, he loves tennis, but he's got all those signs up. Bill Belichick, he's got one sign up, do your job. And really our job should be to improve tennis. Our job should be able to get little kids to hit the ball. And our job should be to learn and to grow. And, so you get people at that table, but you want to get some movers and shakers. So why'd have Patrick at the table? he's a very powerful guy. I
Mm.
mean, certainly he has been. He's still got the microphone.
Yeah.
He's on TV, and that's the guy. He's the most powerful guy at that table because he's got the microphone. And, then okay, does he have the guts? He's a smart guy. I mean, John did 1 year at Stanford. Patrick was there the whole time.
Yeah.
He's a smart guy, but he needs some juice.
Yeah.
He needs some info, and does he have it? Let's just talk about getting kids to play and getting kids to play better and stay with a sport.
Sure.
And that's how many kids start tennis and don't stay tennis. Anyway, I think it's time for you to say one thing. What's your closing comment?
Oh,
I do.
Well, hold on. Wait, who was your fifth one? Was it Lansdorp?
Well, let's go with the first four.
Okay. You got Andy Fitzell, Bill Jacobson, Wayne Bryan, and Patrick McEnroe.
Lansdorp. You got Lansdorp in there?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Is Lansdorp's the fifth one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he's the guy when he was not being diplomatic. Now, if it's world peace, okay, let's be diplomatic.
Yeah.
But we're talking about hitting a little yellow ball between white lines.
Yeah.
Diplomacy in tennis teaching, it kills time.
Yeah.
It kills time. And what happens in tennis is people pretend. Tennis teachers, tennis coaches, for the most part, they like to talk about drills. They get together at these coaching sessions and let's talk about drills because they're protecting their ego. They don't want to talk about strokes because they're pretending they already know strokes. And then if you watch their kids hit the ball, sorry. Fitzell will say that, and everybody loves Fitzell. He's not gonna take the approach that Lansdorp is, but he's gonna be thinking it. But he says it very quietly. It just says it in a few words. Just let's just watch their kids hit the ball. And I was in Iowa one time training the coaches, and this one coach says to me, this probably been on the podcast. He says, "Well, your command style." And Ireland is a beautiful place, beautiful people. And at that time, there was no 10s. They had 12s, 14s, 16s, and 18s. 4 boys, 4 girls. They were either 1 or 2 in the country. And, it's really tennis is just played in the city. It's played in Cork. It's played in Limerick. It's obviously played in Dublin. So this guy says, "Hey, your command style." I said, and Aoife Wilson was helping me, a girl I trained, a gal, great personality, perfect for this situation. So I said, "Aoife, take the kids in the back. I'll just yell something out and you do these footwork drills." And I said, I don't want to be the obnoxious American. This is the same thing in the States. It's the same thing everywhere.
Yeah.
I said, these boys and girls, they can't hit the broadside of a barn. I said, I'm going to set up the cones and I'm going to do the tiebreaker test. And they're going to come to the net and I'm going to here it comes. There's 1 or 2 in the country. I'm going to feed you a forehand volley. Okay, maybe there's 40 coaches watching. They're a little bit nervous. Humor them a little bit. Everybody run a lap, and I'll tell everybody's a little bit nervous. We'll have them do it again. Mm-hmm. And we do it as a tournament. There's 8 of them.
Yeah. And
the tournament's over like that. And the service box is the size of a small living room in an apartment. It's 21 by 13 and a half. And and they're standing at a stationary position. I'm feeding you a forehand volley. Here it comes. Here it comes. And they're in their environment, they're a success. And, in medicine, they'll certainly use this expression. Let's stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
Let's stop the bleeding. But that's where the consumer, do they really know they're taking their kid all over the country to national tournaments and the kid's got a palm up serve.
Yeah.
And their ready position just indicates they are not going to go forward. Their grip on the forehand side just indicates they're not going to play a conventional forehand approach volley.
Right.
But yet, the kid who's got the heart of a lion and they've hit 1 million balls and they have dedicated parents, they're going to be able to take the role of spoiler and they're going to win and win and win. But somewhere along the line, generally, there's that invisible tsunami.
Yep.
It's coming.
Yep.
It's coming. So
I like
we got them all.
Yeah, I like your dinner. I think honestly, I feel like you could make this happen. This is not that far fetched of a dinner.
Tell me again. We'll shut up here.
You got Andy Fitzell, Bill Jacobson, Wayne Bryan.
All right, so I'll switch. Bill Jacobson, such a class act, gentleman. He's listened to a few podcasts. I asked him to be on, and
yeah,
he said he wasn't up to it.
We'll see if we can pull up a 6th chair.
Well, put down Warren Pretorius.
Okay.
He's a fantastic sub for that.
Okay, perfect.
Because he's just going to know stats. He's just going to know analytics and, tennis math. Like you can just put down the questions: how, what, why, where, when. It's like with Djokovic. Not with Djokovic. You can go back to his childhood coach. She was influenced by Braden, but Adolf Kavoski. How was Federer taught when he was a little kid? He stood in one place on balance with long follow throughs. How many times do I have to tell people that? And okay, how? But no one even cares,
right?
And Federer, he's Swiss. He most likely he's not going to. That's just the way the Swiss are. I've been to Switzerland a few times. It seems like everybody goes to bed at 9:00, and everybody. Juan, a great friend from Colombia, he says everybody in Switzerland is a police officer. So Federer's not going to go in and go, let's shake up the player development program, But that's like a Jack Kramer had so much to do with building tennis. That was his personality. We get into brain typing. Kramer was an ENTJ, get not lead. And, he would go in and he would just be critical of how people were playing the game. But he also too says, I don't know how to teach people how to hit it, but this is not how you play. He was a great junior. He was number 1 in the country. And his father said, hey son, you got to realize now you're going to play pro. You've got a little kid game. Now you got to get a big kid game. Right now they're playing the nationals. Is just finishing up the US 18s, girls, US 18 boys. What's happening in that tournament when they're playing doubles? What's happening?
Right.
And, I recently, Bob Ryan was at the NCAs. And, I want to have his dad at the table. So Bob's a classy guy. I mean, you got to love the Bryan brothers.
Yeah.
But he said, but it's great to see all the serve and volleying that they're doing in college doubles. And I'm going, is he on the sauce? I mean, what's he looking? What's he looking at? I mean, am I missing something here? He was just being nice.
Yeah,
being a super guy. I contacted a high school coach last week. It was a young boy that I coached. Unfortunately, he passed away at the age of 32, and communicated with his coach and such. And coach sends me a picture of this high school team, the Bryan brothers there. I love the Bryan brothers. There's so much that people could draw from them.
Absolutely. But
when it comes down to Wayne's letter, I would go, all right, Wayne, we're bringing your letter. Well, Wayne, you said he's such an upbeat. I've met him. I don't really know him at all, but he's so outgoing, so aggressive. He's been a positive force on the game. But when that letter came out, what he said was that was a mistake. This is what he wrote, but he didn't think that the letter would go public. But once it went public, he's a man's man. He stood behind it.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, Wayne, you're here, and we're not going to be backslapping and going, life is great. Because I one time had tickets to, doing work for Roddick Academy. My son Connor and I, we went in 2007 and watched the Davis Cup final. Everybody in America, it seemed like everybody in American tennis was there. And, we tagged along with Wayne Bryan. Didn't say anything, but just watched how he talked to these kids from the schools. And if there was one, it seemed like there was 100 of them. And we ended up getting on the bus, rode the bus because, we had these special tickets because of the Roddick Tennis Academy. And he just told those kids, he talked to those kids. He said, if anybody talks, you're out. You look straight ahead. Only reason you go out, you raise your hand and you can go to the bathroom. And he had all these kids just looking straight ahead, And your son Dorian.
No, it's literally exactly how you talk about Dorian.
But they weren't 8 years old.
Yeah.
But then also, we had these really great seats. But I said, no, I got to go watch Wayne, without even knowing. It's not like I'm not going to go up and talk to somebody in that situation. No way.
Yeah.
But that guy is so intense.
Yeah.
And their mother had so much to do with it. That's an amazing story. But I would say, all right, Wade, you're at the dinner table, but we got your letter. We got your letter. Because I think his personality, Lansdorp, is just, and I've only been around him a little bit. I one time was in the Davis Cup room, the locker room, 87, because I ended up being a guest of the Seguzo. I had, basically, I was just lucky to be there. And I remember one time when Elliot Telscher, one of his players, came to a workshop I ran, and I said, he's a little younger than I am. So this was maybe 15 years ago. He's retired, and I said, does Robert Lansdorp still give you SHIT? And he goes, yeah, of course. That's all he does. And but no, I just remember when I would have loved to be in the room. I had a few people talking to me about it, and so Vic Braden was at the table talking about what do we do with American tennis. And I go, Vic, we love you, buddy, but it's not brain typing. It's not going to help American tennis. That's a nice tool, but that's his intellectual curiosity. That was something that he was just totally into at the time, and that's Vic. But Lansdorp was just going, what are we doing? And we have to, he basically was saying and pleading that we have to do a better job with younger players, and then all this money selecting kids and having camps, and that was never done before 1987. So American tennis. I'm talking so fast and so loud.
I love it.
I'm talking so loud, so fast. I don't think this is the norm, but for our listeners, I apologize, but I'm doing this to stay awake.
No, I love it. I think you have a great table. I'll serve the dinner.
Yeah. But again, with McEnroe there, and just somebody's got to be the leader of the discussion. This is the purpose of the dinner. Like, isn't the food great? No, it's like first of all, if it's going to be really successful, you're not going to have dinner.
Yeah, that's true.
And we're going, hey, McEnroe, we invited you because you're on TV and you got the microphone. You're the most powerful guy at the table.
Yeah.
He did a really smart thing at one point. He was in charge, bright guy. He's a New Yorker. I'm a hick. He's a slick. But when you're an upstate New York kid and you're around kids from the city, like a kid from Wisconsin, you don't get that when you go to Madison. So the upstate New York kids, I remember going to university and going, whoa, these New Yorkers.
Yeah.
Whoa, it's a whole different world. Gladwell talks about that in the book Outliers.
Yeah.
So but somebody would have to run the meeting. It's, okay, we're not having dinner. Better yet, let's have some beers.
Yeah.
Let's get this thing going. And go, McEnroe, the reason you're here, okay? Stanford's got nothing to do with it. Dick Gould's an amazing guy, but Dick Gould, right? We know that what he did was amazing. And I respect it. I had a chance to be around him just a little bit. Dick Gould, I've heard so many great things about Dick Gould. But at one point, he didn't even have to recruit. If you were one of the best Americans, you were going to Stanford.
Yep.
Yeah, you had to have the grades. So that was like some of the best Americans didn't go to Stanford. But I would want, okay, what are we going to talk about here is no substitute for a good beginning. What needs to happen when people first start playing the game? And, can we get, like say, for example, Wayne's very positive in his letters and such about the private sector. Well, okay, fine. But when your kids are unbelievable tennis players, the private sector that he circulated in, and certainly, obviously someone like that seeing this, that, and the other thing, but you have to think about what road someone travels. What path are you walking down? And if you're always around, like a lot of these guys, gals, mostly guys, they just die to be around the Grand Slams, the majors.
Yeah.
The majors. They'll do anything to be in the booth. They'll change their last name to be in the booth, to be a leech and be a parasite and live off these top players. And did they really do anything? Well, they're a mentor, they're a confidant, they're important. But what's the story behind the story? There's too much infighting now. Where's the money going to go? Where's the money going to go? There's too much self-promotion in junior tennis. And, I am great because I did this. And, taking tennis to the schools. You can't just put a racket in the kid's hands. The parents have to be educated. Everybody has to be educated. That's where the money should be going. Education, education, education. I've coached all sorts of kids that have been cherry picked by the USTA since '87.
Sure.
And so have my students. And it really comes right down to it. Really?
Yeah.
That just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. How did they get to that level? And really how they distribute money. And then you really get in trouble. All the upper level people that are making major, major money. I mean, it's like our boy Donald Trump. A lot of people don't like Donald Trump, but he's a New Yorker. Just imagine if he was in charge of the USTA. He'd walk around going, "What do you do?" And then the producing side of it, and I'm not going politics on this, but with kind of that in-your-face management style.
Sure.
Just like, I'll end by saying this. Here's a great quote. And Bill Cosby, "I don't know the key to success, but I know the key to failure. Make everybody happy."
Right.
And at that table is like, no, we got to do a better job.
Yeah, let's get to work.
And how can we do a better job, and how can we reach people to do a better job? Dave Fish has said that for a long time. The toughest things that have to be really improved upon and that's why he was so big behind the UTR was going to be nonprofit and genderless and ageless and make tennis less expensive.
Right.
And it hasn't gone that way. It's changed, and he stepped back, and he doesn't have anything to do with it. So can you regulate competition? But you should be able to regulate technique. I mean, I've said it. Is the tennis court a rectangle? Does water run uphill, downhill? No one's going to invent. Okay, they can make some changes like the Fosbury flop. I mean, you can go through things where there was some innovation in sport, but this is the physics of how you're going to come out of the starting blocks. This is the math for you to have alignment when you take a foul shot.
Right.
So some sports, it's just a given that they teach basics. Like the sport I played, if you can't skate, you can't play. But in tennis, you can have really, really poor technique. But if you hang in there long enough, okay, you can start to, make some shots and be consistent and whatever. But there's a ceiling on how good people can be. Last thing, the strength of the individual come out. People say, well, it's a system. System is just an organized plan. The alphabet's a system. Can we agree on A? This is the shape. This is the sound. But that's an interesting question. No food. It's not going to be diplomatic. We'll get the beers going so people get some liquid courage, and we'll have fun. McEnroe, he could handle it. And say, McEnroe, the reason you're at the table is you got the microphone. You're on TV.
I think it's great.
And Lansdorf, because he's going to say, "What the hell?" I mean, and with there's a few of us. Andy Fitzell with when it comes down to Braden, really knowing Braden, and it's not hero worship. Is if people knew how much getting Ariel had to do with Braden, how they teamed up with physics, and Vic would be the first person to say, psychology, you don't need it. Show me how to hit it. And kids don't know how to hang onto the racket. They don't know where to stand. Yeah. And fundamentals, it's there'd be a lot more success if we had more fundamentals. This has been fun.
Yeah, Coach.
I apologize about being so loud and fast. I hope we made some sense.
No, I love it. I love it.
I usually ask this afterwards, but how long was this? 2:48. We're done.
I like it.
Adios,
Coach.
amigos.
Thank you for having me.
It's
a pleasure, and thanks for putting up with Dorian.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
People might think I was on the beer.